In this wondrous, desolate land, a child was born. At this moment, in a luxurious mansion, a cheerful nanny spoke to the lady before her. Thank God. God has truly blessed us. My lady, it's a baby boy, and he looks just like the Lord. Have you thought of a name yet, my lady? The beautiful woman lying in bed gazed at the child beside her with a gentle expression and said weakly, Luin, my Luin, I hope he will be a light that illuminates this world. And so, a few years passed. At this point, our protagonist, Luin, was sitting in a study and happened to overhear a conversation between his father and a servant. Please do your best and bring me back plenty of marine resources, his father said. The servant on the other side heard this and quickly replied, Of course I will take care of it, my lord. And upon hearing their conversation, Luin suddenly spoke up. Hey, Mr. Bin? Yes, young master, Bin said, turning to look at Luin. And at that moment, Luin warned him, Don't take the road near the southern mountain range. The flow of mana there is strange. Hearing this, Bin was a bit bewildered. What do you mean? Bin said as he turned to look at his lord with a very confused expression. And even the lord himself wasn't sure what his son was talking about. Time passed quickly, and on a stormy night with crashing thunder and lightning, Bin finally returned, drenched from the rain. Luin's father saw him and quickly opened the door, calling out to him, Oh, Bin, you're back so late. I was very worried. Bin hurried into the house, took a moment to catch his breath and said, Ha, my apologies. I had to take a much longer detour. Hearing this, Luin's father asked, Did something happen? I managed to avoid a disaster thanks to the young master, Bin said cheerfully. And this made the lord even more curious. Huh? What do you mean? Bin scratched his head and said with a laugh, The road near the southern mountain range. I took the young master's advice and avoided that path yesterday. I heard it was attacked by monsters. Upon hearing this, the lord's face turned pale and he exclaimed, What? Bin continued. Everyone who took that path ran into trouble, but I'm fine thanks to the young master. At this point, Bin asked in a low voice, My lord, do you think he can sense the mana in the air? Luin's father pondered for a moment and then said, I don't know either, but if it's true, that boy might just be the future of this land. As for Luin, he had been different since he was a child. Starting from that day, he showed a natural talent for magic. Luin could sense mana at the age of 6 and could summon it just 1 year later. And at the age of 10, Luin surpassed many scions of prestigious families at the Xnit Magic Academy, the top magic academy in the DN Kingdom, and became the top entrant with the title of genius. But this also made him somewhat arrogant, believing his name would elevate his family to new heights. But that was as far as he got. On the first day of class, Luin realized he was nothing special, utterly insignificant. At that time, during the practice session, the instructor said, Well then, let's see the skills of our top entrant, Luin. Yes, ma'am, Luin said confidently, then stepped forward and stood facing a wooden practice dummy. Next, he used his mana to create a fireball floating in his hand. Everything would have been fine, but Luin just kept holding the fireball in his hand, to the point where the instructor had to say, Luin, hurry up and cast it. At this point, Luin made a pained expression and said, Ma'am, I can't. Luin, what's wrong? Luin gritted his teeth in pain. Then finally, he let out a terrible scream, and his spell dissipated as everyone around watched with concern. And the cause of this incident was mana disorder. To put it simply, it's a condition where the body is incapable of casting magic even 1 meter away. For a mage, this body of mine is clearly the absolute worst. Luin thought bitterly as tears began to stream down his face. And that was the moment everyone realized he came from a mediocre family and had no talent at all. Because of this, the attitude of those around him changed drastically. Just like now, when Luin accidentally bumped into another student's shoulder. Hey, are you okay? You just bumped into a useless bastard. What if you become as pathetic as him? The skinny guy hurriedly asked his friend, completely ignoring Luin. The fat guy heard this and looked over at Luin with a contemptuous gaze, then said, Ah, damn, I'd better go home and take a shower. Meanwhile, Luin just gave them a cold glare and said nothing, because he was well aware of his own situation. Someone with no magical ability, a useless person who can't cast magic in a magic academy. To those who hate me, I'm now nothing more than their favorite plaything. And just as he thought, the fat guy across from him, after seeing his glare, said, Hey, what are you looking at? How dare a useless bastard who can't even cast magic glare at me like that? He said this while throwing a punch at Luin, and afterward, Luin could only quietly hide in a corner and blame himself. Can I even become a mage? He said through his tears. Luin Adel, the name that entered the academy with the highest scores, the name that held more expectations than anyone else. The name has been more diligent and hardworking than anyone else. But thanks to that damn curse, a magic genius who enrolled with the highest scores has become a magic cripple. That was the end of everything. Or at least, that's what he thought. Back to reality. At the training ground of Xnit Academy, an outdoor combat training session was taking place. Next up, Luin Adel. Upon hearing the teacher's voice calling his name, he hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Yes." The professor, seeing this, gently said, "Just do as I instructed. You just need to create a fireball and hit that dummy. This man is named Haid-Do. He is the combat magic professor guiding Luin's class." Even though Luin heard Haid-Do's instructions, he was still anxious. A fireball is a type of magic that any student can easily perform, but for someone who can't use mana like him, it's an incredibly difficult task. Will I be able to do it this time? Luin thought anxiously. Meanwhile, Professor Haid-Do shouted, "Luin, start now." At his command, Luin gritted his teeth and thought, "Come on, don't give up. I can do this time, right?" Luin thought as he began to use his mana to create a flame in his hand. "No matter what, I have to cast it. I must be able to do it," he told himself. At the same time, the size of Luin's fireball gradually grew larger over time. It grew so large that even the other students outside watching were astonished. Look at the size of his fireball. Can a human really have that much mana? The professor was now quietly observing Luin and said nothing. Turning to Luin, he felt a bit of joy inside. "Great! If it continues like this, I will succeed," Luin thought as he prepared to release the magic in his hand. But then his body suddenly froze. "Oh no, not again," Luin thought to himself as he looked at his trembling palm and told himself, "No, don't. I can't give up." Thinking this, he tried to cast the magic once more, but the result was still failure. His body trembled for a moment before he began to vomit water. Professor Haid-Do saw this and shouted to encourage him. "Luin, can't you do it?" Luin said with difficulty, but in response to this, the professor encouraged him again. "Come on, release it." "I can't release it," Luin said dejectedly, still maintaining the magic in his palm. At this point, Haid-Do reminded him, "Luin, you're a senior student now. If you can't even perform basic magic like a fireball, how can you pass the graduation exam?" After his words, some whispers began to circulate. "It's truly hopeless," Luin thought to himself. "Yes, I really am a failure." Thinking this, he could only clench his fists and say, "I'm sorry, I will practice more." Then, he quietly returned to his line. "In this target training session, we need to create a fireball and hit the target countless times." Someone who can't even cast a spell, what can he say about hitting a target? If he can't even do this, he won't even be able to become a third-rate magician. The whispers continued as Luin walked back to his line. How can a useless person be the top student? He should just give up. Truly, a disgrace to the students. Luin was already too accustomed to such mockery, so he wasn't angry at all. Since the top student was an unknown noble, I made the students from prestigious families feel envious. So, they don't like me. Such bullying is just a mosquito bite to me. But what truly brings me down is the fact that I had no hope from the very beginning. It's all because of the curse that has haunted me for the past 6 years. Mana disorder. Despite struggling for so many years, I'm starting to wonder how much longer I can endure this. Here, transitioning to the main hall of Xnit Academy. At this moment, everyone was gathered together discussing the recent test. "Did you do well? Very good." And at this moment, someone in the crowd recognized Luin and spoke up. "Oh, who's that? Isn't that the stupid Luin? It's time for you to pack up and go home, Luin, right? If I were you, I'd probably dig a hole and hide in it. You're incredibly thick-skinned. Do you know what the juniors call you? Stupid Luin. Because of you, the performance of the senior class has dropped. Why don't you just go home to your backwater territory?" Ha ha ha. And in response to this humiliating and provocative remark, Luin's face darkened. But this brown-haired guy seemed blind to the change in his expression and continued to provoke him. "You have no skills. At least you should have some assets, right? Only now do I get to know about the AN family." Luin heard this but ignored them, gritting his teeth and enduring as he walked away. Unfortunately, the blonde guy continued barking. "Oh, right. My father also said they're just empty barrels making a lot of noise. Looking at you, I can tell what kind of family you belong to." When the blonde guy said this, Luin couldn't hold back anymore, so he turned around and gave him a straight punch to the face, causing him to spit blood and fly back a meter in the astonished gaze of the chubby guy next to him. Then he looked at him with a furious gaze and said, "Bark another stupid comment and see. So what about my father?" The blonde guy over here also started clutching his bleeding nose and said angrily, "You bastard, how dare you?" Hearing this, Luin also said coldly, "Ben Phone, you need to know when to stop. Who the hell are you to mess with my father and my family?" And just as he said that, the fat guy next to him saw his friend get hit and immediately rushed in. "You bastard, do you not know who we are?" he said as he threw a punch at Luin. But it seems this guy was all talk and no action, because right after that, Luin landed a punch right in his stomach, and he immediately crumpled over, groaning in pain. Luin's punch was so strong that the guy even started drooling. But before Luin could even enjoy his victory, Ben Phone's voice rang out beside him. "You arrogant bastard, you dare to hit me?" Hearing that, Luin quickly turned towards him and almost fainted, because at that moment, Ben Phone was starting to use his magic to prepare an attack. I can't believe he's using combat magic inside the academy. Doesn't he care about getting expelled? Luin thought to himself, turning towards Ben Phone. It seems he's gone so crazy he can't even think about things like that anymore. After gathering enough energy for his spell, he shouted, "You useless trash with a mana disorder, go to hell." With that, he launched the ball of lightning straight at Luin. Meanwhile, Luin was frozen stiff in front of this spell. My body can't move, he thought. At the same time, Professor Ido, who had somehow gotten word of the situation, had already rushed to the scene and shouted, "Are you students going to stop right now?" But unfortunately, his running speed and his words were a bit too late, because Luin had already been hit. Instantly, the ball of lightning struck him, releasing countless bolts of electricity all around. Damn it, I'm done for, Luin thought before losing consciousness. And then, while his consciousness was still in a hazy state, suddenly, Luin heard a voice ring in his ear. Status window unlocked. Player's artifact has been activated. Luin's consciousness was still fuzzy, not understanding what was happening at all. Where am I? It feels like my body is sinking deep into water. Then, the notification sound rang out again. You are the incarnation of Draa, the world destroyer. Hearing this sound, Luin was startled and became a little more alert. What? Draa? The world destroyer? What the hell is this? Thinking this, Luin quickly opened his eyes and was horrified to find himself in a cosmic space with the image of some mysteriously dressed, mage-like person appearing before him. And what was more special was that this guy was absolutely gigantic. What in the world? Am I dreaming? No, this is too real for a dream, Luin thought to himself. Meanwhile, the mysterious person opposite him was muttering something that Luin couldn't quite hear. Wait, it seems like he's trying to say something, Luin thought as he tried to focus on what this person wanted to say. Then, he managed to hear the mysterious person mutter a few words. Luin Adel. That's definitely my name, he thought to himself. But at the same time, another voice rang in his ear. Luin Adel, are you awake? These words were from Helen. She was the high-level healing mage of this school. Hearing her voice, Luin was startled awake and quickly asked, "Where am I?" Seeing this, Helen quickly helped him lie back down and said gently, "The recovery room. It's okay. You don't have to force yourself to sit up. It's fine. I'm a little dizzy, but I can sit," Luin said quickly, while thinking back on what he had just seen. Did I just pass out? But what on earth was that just now? It's still so vivid. Thinking this, he asked Helen, "How long was I out?" "Almost a day. You're lucky it wasn't worse." "God helped you," Helen said calmly. Luin was a bit surprised to hear that, as he didn't think he had been unconscious for so long. And after a moment of silence, he also asked, "Am I completely healed now?" Hearing this, Helen looked a little worried and said, "We still need to monitor you, but you look very healthy for someone who was just struck directly by lightning. There are no wounds, burns, or any internal organ damage. I've never seen a case like yours." It wasn't just Helen, even Luin himself found it hard to believe after hearing it. What? Can this even happen? Lightning is a terrifying spell that can incinerate a body in an instant. Moreover, I took a direct hit, but how is my body completely unharmed? Luin thought as he looked at the palm of his hand with a worried expression. But just then, a voice came from outside the door. "Excuse us for a moment." Hearing this voice, Helen reminded Luin, "The professor is here. I'll go check the results now. If there are any problems, let me know immediately." After saying that, she left immediately, leaving Ido and Luin to talk privately. At this moment, Ido also looked at Luin and asked, "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," Luin said calmly. Hearing this, Ido also said gently, "That's very fortunate." And there was a meeting among the professors about this incident. First of all, Ben Phone will be expelled for using powerful attack magic with the intent to kill, spreading false rumors about the Adel family, and for his unfair treatment and bullying of you. Of course, you will also receive a punishment. The teachers have all decided on this verdict. Hearing this, Luin also bowed his head and said, "But I also fought back against Ben. Considering what has happened, you will have to participate in the student volunteer activities for 1 month. Also, I want to ask this question. Are you holding on to a treasure? The treasure is a legendary weapon left behind by ancient wizards with an endless source of mana." Back to the story. After hearing this from him, Luin was startled and said, "What? A treasure? Surely I don't have one. If I did, I wouldn't be bullied." The two onlookers thought for a moment. After all, considering its value and rarity, the chief of the Ale clan must have used it for the benefit of the clan. Turning to Luin, he also wondered and said, "But why are you asking me about that?" At this question, Professor Haido began to recall past memories and said, "I definitely saw a red light enveloping your body just before the lightning struck. It looked like a high-level treasure protecting you and repelling Ben's spell." "What are you talking about?" Luin said, confused, while thinking to himself, "Treasure? What is he talking about? Wait, don't tell me it has something to do with the dream earlier. No, what am I thinking?" With this thought, Luin spoke up. "Even though I don't understand what happened, I definitely don't have a treasure." All right, take a rest, Haido gently said before starting to leave, leaving Luin behind to rest. Luin watched his back and thought he had told the professor he didn't know what happened, but he didn't ask anything further. What is the professor thinking? What I experienced was no different from a dream and that strange voice. The treasure, Draa, the world destroyer and player. I think I have one more question. What was it? The status window? And just as Luin thought of this, suddenly a dark blue screen appeared before his eyes, causing him to exclaim, "What the heck is this? Is it real?" Luin said in panic. At this moment, Helen was also entering from outside, and seeing him shout like that, she hurried over to ask, "Luin, are you okay? Do you feel unwell anywhere?" Ah. Hearing this, Luin quickly replied, "No, it's not that. Do you see it? The blue panel in front of me," he said while pointing at the blue screen before him. Helen, thinking he was losing his mind, quickly said, "What are you rambling about, Luin? There's nothing there. Are you sure it's you?" Turning to Luin, after hearing this beautiful girl confirm, it made him even more anxious. No way. She really can't see it? If so, then this can only be seen by me. In Luin's view, the system screen in front of him was displaying, Luin Adel, the embodiment of Draa, the world destroyer, is the result of the pursuit of endless power. The wizard Draa perished along with his world. For Draa, someone who has lacked mana since birth, power is the source of his authority. The player treasure of Draa can open the status window and can increase infinite power by completing quests. Strength 150, Agility 100, Wisdom 1550. Reading this, Luin became a bit calmer. I should sound the village drum first. Thinking this, he said, "It's nothing. I'm just a bit confused." Helen, hearing this, chuckled a little and said, "Ha, don't bury your head. The test results are completely normal. You can return to the dormitory now." Luin, hearing this, happily said, "Yes, thank you." Time quickly passed, and it was evening. Currently, Luin was at the training ground, thinking about the things he had encountered. Today, I'm still alive, after being hit by a lightning bolt. The man with red eyes I met in another space and the status window I saw said I am the embodiment of Draa. Perhaps the treasure of the wizard named Draa has been transferred into me, not into a strange window that displays anymore. Luin was thinking while staring at the system screen in front of him. The quest can be repeated because you have become a player linked to Draa, the world destroyer. You need to train your body to prepare for the power-up process. Punch 0, 1, kick 100, spin, kick 0, 1. Reward 10 strength points. Reward unlock skill. After reading this, Luin began to roll up his sleeves and prepare to follow the task that this system assigned, to see how it goes. Punching and kicking are also related to strength. How can it help me become a wizard? But this is not the time to ask questions. I have to try first. With this thought, Luin took a deep breath and threw his fist forward. And right after that, the system issued a notification, punch 1, 100. And when he threw his fist again, the number changed to 2, 100. Awesome, it's increasing. At this rate, I'll finish soon. Luin thought happily to himself, but right after that, he encountered a bit of a problem. Because when he threw his fist for the third time, the number displayed on the system remained the same and did not increase at all. And this made our protagonist start to ponder. This time it didn't increase. I think it won't count as completed if I swing my hand incorrectly. All right, punch correctly, Luin told himself. And then after a long while, Luin exhaled and said, "Ha, finally done. What's the reward?" Luin asked curiously. And right after that, the system issued a notification. Quest completed, awarding reward, 10 strength points, skill unlocked. Next, Luin himself also noticed a strange change within his body. What is this? What is this feeling? It is gently flowing through my veins. Something more fundamental. Yes, this feeling, I have truly become stronger, Luin thought while clenching his fist. Then right after that, he couldn't resist wanting to test how strong he'd become. Let's see. He mumbled, then threw a punch straight ahead. With just that one casual fist, it turned into a wind-slicing blow. Seeing this, Luin smiled and thought, the power infused into my magic has really gotten stronger, along with its speed and destructive force. Everything has truly changed from before. My base strength has increased. What about the skill unlock reward? Thinking this, Luin immediately said, status window, and right after, the status display screen appeared in front of him. The internal power circle replaces mana with strength. The mana circle is replaced by the power circle. From now on, all magic will be affected by the player's strength. From now on, all movements will be affected by the player's strength. After reading the skill's description, Luin felt a bit curious. Replacing the mana circle with a power circle. Does that mean my mana will be replaced by strength? Whether one senses or studies it, a mana circle surrounds their heart. The mana circle plays a major role in the process of releasing and amplifying mana, increasing stats depending on the size of the circle and the amount of mana a mage can control. I have 4 mana circles, more than other kids my age, but because of my own defect, they've become useless. Thinking this, Luin began to sense the mana circles inside his heart and was startled. The mana circles had really disappeared, so the powerful circles spinning wildly in their place must be the power circle. A power circle instead of a mana circle. You can't be a mage without a mana circle. If this new circle can't do what a mana circle does, then what's going to happen to me? Furthermore, is my life as a mage going to end just like this? No, it's too soon to despair. I have to try it first. Fireball, Luin mumbled, and immediately, a giant fireball appeared in the palm of his hand. This left him completely astonished. So fast. How is this possible? And it looks incredibly powerful too. The moment I saw the size of this fireball, I knew this had to be the power of the artifact. Luin grinned from ear to ear at this discovery. Then, he recalled what he had learned about magic. Magic has a basic activation mechanism, so it takes 10 seconds to charge the energy before you can release the power. But I can bypass that 10-second process and create a fireball with the strength inside my body. This is the power of an artifact. Just as Luin was thinking this, the system suddenly sent him another notification, which slightly surprised him. Huh? What is this? Draa's Berserker Mage, passive. Draa, who was unable to cast magic normally, created this magic method. Concentrate your mana into your body and attack the enemy. You are not affected by your own magic. When casting magic, a strength enhancement effect is added. Magical attacks will inflict additional physical damage. After seeing this notification, Luin wondered, a Berserker Mage concentrates mana into their body to attack? How does that work? So that Draa guy also had a mana disorder curse like me, and he fought by concentrating mana into his fists and feet. How on earth did he create this method? Luin wondered. And right then, the system issued another notification. A new quest has appeared. Quest. Practice using the Berserker Mage method. Use the power circle and strength to attack a target. Objective. Attack one target. Reward. Strength plus 10. Attack one target, Luin said as he turned to look at the wooden dummy nearby, thinking to himself at the same time, I've never even considered this method. If I can become a mage by following this method, then I have to give it a shot. With that, Luin threw a punch straight at the wooden dummy in front of him, activating the skills simultaneously. Fireball. As a result, his fist looked as if it was encased in a giant fireball. The moment it hit the target, the dummy exploded into smithereens. It's a success, Luin thought with a wide grin. Then, the system displayed a quest complete notification. Reward, strength plus 10. But after seeing the notification screen, Luin no longer had the strength to even stand. His whole body collapsed to the ground. I did it. I finally completed the quest. I always failed at the magic release step, but in the end, I succeeded by using my fists. Come to think of it, this method. Just what kind of person was Draa? I want to learn more about him, but my body feels so heavy right now, Luin thought as he slowly drifted off to sleep. And so it went until the next morning, when the noisy chatter of other students reached Luin's ears. What's this? Is he sleeping here? It looks like he trained all night, but is he really sleeping right here? Should we wake him up? He's probably not dead, right? Pff, how could he be dead? He took a lightning bolt from the Lord and was totally unfazed. Hearing all this noise, Luin's eyes slowly fluttered open. Why is it so noisy? He thought to himself. When the other students saw him slowly sit up, they hurriedly backed away and said, Oh my God, he's awake. Luin, you scared us half to death. Hearing this, Luin stretched and said boredly, What's going on? Why is everyone gathered here? First time seeing someone sleep outside or something? What do you think? It's totally weird for a noble to ignore a warm, soft bed in the dorms to sleep out here. Hey Luin, were you drinking or something? Hearing that, Luin waved his hand dismissively and said, What the hell is alcohol? I'm too tired, so I'm just gonna sleep. See you. After saying that, he immediately left. At this moment, the other students were also whispering among themselves. Luin seems like a completely different person, doesn't he? Really? Then, one student glanced at the scarecrow that Luin had destroyed the night before and exclaimed, But the scarecrow is completely wrecked. Only that post is left? Is it Luin? Another student heard this and immediately retorted, Are you crazy? No way. Turning back to Luin, he was now heading back to his room in the dormitory. At this moment, inside the room, a blonde student saw him and asked, Huh? What's up, Luin? Did you stay out all night? This young man is Jason Damond, a 6th-year student at Xnit Academy. He is the eldest son of the Diamond family, a well-known mining family, but at least he treats someone considered a waste like Luin kindly. However, he is also a heavy drinker and womanizer, often sneaking out of the academy. Returning to Jason, he then asked, What's going on? You usually don't stay out of your room for this long, Luin coldly replied. You don't need to pry. But unfortunately, as soon as Luin said this, Jason glanced at him and grinned with a very sly smile. Don't tell me you went to meet some girl. Hey, after getting struck by lightning, did you finally learn to enjoy life? Come on, tell me what you did last night. Shut up, I'm going to take a shower. As Luin spoke, he casually threw his shirt at Jason's face and immediately ducked into the bathroom. Ah, finally alive, Luin sighed comfortably as he soaked in the bathtub. Then he remembered he still had a side quest, so he checked the mission. Right after he thought this, the mission notification screen appeared. Repeatable mission, physical training. Because you have become a player connected to Draa, the world destroyer. You need to train your body to enhance your strength. Punch at least 100 times, kick at least 200 times, and spin kick at least 200 times. Reward, strength, plus 10. Seeing this, Luin began to think, the reward is still the same, but the requirements have doubled. Does that mean it will keep doubling in the future? I knew it. This won't be easy at all, but if I can become a magician this way, it will be worth it. Time quickly passed, and a month flew by. The repeatable mission can be done a maximum of once a day, but the rewards remain the same. Meanwhile, the requirements keep increasing. If I can't complete the mission on that day, all progress will reset to 0 the next day, so I can't skip any missions. The only good thing is that the mission requirements won't exceed 3,000 times. If I train any harder, I might die from doing these missions, Luin thought to himself and continued with the tasks. And just then, the mission completion notification appeared. Repeatable mission, physical training. Punch 3,000 times, completed. Kick 3,000 times, completed. Spin kick 3,000 times, completed. Mission completed. Reward, strength plus 10. Throughout the month, I trained like this and achieved a new skill. Body art. Passive. Increases physical abilities, making the body stronger and more agile based on training progress. Scene shifts to the classroom in the morning. At this moment, while Luin was sleeping, the students were discussing him. Luin has been acting strange lately. Yeah, he usually never dares to blink during class, yet now he's rolling over and sleeping like that. Is that all you see? He seems to be living in the training yard lately and only practicing kicks. Leave him alone. Is this the first time he's been so odd? He must be doing something to deal with his mana disorder. Anyway, it won't help. Thus, over the past month, I completed the missions. At the same time, I also searched for clues about Draa from the books in the library. But I couldn't find anyone named Draa in the records. Not only that, but there were also no clues about things like the World Destroyer, players, status windows, or missions. Draa, who exactly is he? Who gave me this power? Luin said while checking his information from the system. Luin Adel. The embodiment of Draa, the World Destroyer. Strength, 470. Agility, 100. Wisdom, 1,550. And while Luin was still observing the system screen, Jason's voice rang out beside him. Luin, come here. Hearing this, Luin turned and asked, what's up? Do you know something? What? So you don't know. That's why you're leisurely reading books like this, Jason said worriedly. At this moment, Luin's face changed slightly, and he asked, is there something serious? The head of the Adel family is here. Luin, it's your father, Jason said hurriedly. And right after Jason's words, Luin's face shifted to a worried state. Then he quickly ran to find his father, following Jason's directions. Dad, he called out urgently when he saw his father talking with Professor Hydo. Lord Adel, upon seeing his son, joyfully exclaimed, Luin, my son, there you are. Following that, the two had a private conversation in a luxurious room. At this moment, Luin was the one to ask first. It's been 6 years, huh? Since I was 10 and entered this academy, have you and everyone been well? Yeah, I'm doing just fine, Lord Adel replied happily. Opposite him, Luin then asked, what about Luina, your little sister? She's grown a lot. She's been practicing swordsmanship lately. She said she'd protect her weak older brother. Luin heard this, scratched his head, and laughed. Haha, good grief, that's so embarrassing. She's always been so bold, Adel said with a laugh. Well, I suppose that's enough of the small talk. At that moment, Luin's expression became serious as he said, Father, I'm doing very well. What do you mean by that? Adel asked. Luin then explained, I'm truly fine. I haven't been hurt physically or mentally at all. Back to the Lord. After hearing his son's words, he calmly took a sip of tea and said, Luin, actually, the reason I visited the academy was to ask for your opinion on leaving. If things are too difficult, you can return to our domain anytime you wish. I know you're facing many hardships that you haven't spoken of, aren't you? And to these words, Luin immediately replied, Actually, I figured out why you came here. But Father, I think I've found a way. So please promise me one thing. I will achieve a good score on the practical test in the upcoming exam. In return, if I fail again this time, I will do as you wish, Luin said with a very confident voice. After I promised to get a high score on the practical exam, my father saw my determination and returned to the manor after our chat. And then, the exam I had been eagerly waiting for finally arrived. The proctor shouted loudly for all the students to hear. Attention! Today is the introductory magic exam. Note that any cheating will result in a failing grade. You may begin. Following the proctor's instructions, Luin picked up his pen and started writing. The academy's exam consists of 2 parts, a written test and a practical test. The practical test is divided into 4 parts. First is targeting, followed by magic measurement, practical combat, and one-on-one duels. As someone with a mana disorder, I have always gotten perfect scores on the written exams for the past 6 years. In the practical exams, however, Mike from the prestigious Gary Hill family has always ranked first. However, this time will be different because I will definitely take first place in the practical exam, Luin thought to himself while diligently writing. And after the written exams were finished, Jason's curious voice piped up next to him. Hey Luin, you've been acting a bit strange lately. Do you have a plan for today's practical exam? Luin heard him and said confidently, yeah, I'm going to approach it in a completely new way. Hearing that, Jason excitedly asked, really? What kind of method did you find? But before Luin could answer, a voice came from behind them. Luin, what do you think you're doing here? Don't tell me you plan on taking the practical exam with that pathetic body. With your mana disorder, it's completely useless. These words belonged to Mike, the student who always ranked first in the practical exams. Hearing this, Luin simply smirked and replied, so what if I am? I'm here to take the exam. In response to Luin's words, Mike placed a hand on his shoulder and said, ha, Luin, as a model student, if I were to give advice to someone like you who has failed the practical exam 6 times, I'd say this. Instead of humiliating yourself, why don't you just give up now? Luin just gave a slight smile and said, who knows? I don't think your advice is all that useful. I think you've got something wrong here. You think someone with a mana disorder can actually pass the practical exam? Mike said, seething internally. What's wrong with this bastard? He used to be such a pushover, so where's all this confidence coming from? Is he insane? Thinking this, he couldn't contain his anger and snapped. I'll put you in your place during the one-on-one duels, just you wait and see. The scene shifts to the practical exam area. The first test is the targeting portion. Its official name is the multi-target marksmanship test. The rules are incredibly simple. The test measures the number of targets hit with a single casting of a spell. However, this year's test is different because the difficulty has been increased significantly. The targets move continuously, making them very hard to hit. As a result, the average scores are horribly low, just as we're seeing now. The students taking the test were mostly hitting only one target, or even none at all. One lucky student managed to hit 4 targets, but the overall performance caused the observing professors to comment in dismay. We only increased the difficulty slightly, and the results are already this terrible. The quality of this year's students is just too low. And while these 2 professors were complaining about the students, a voice spoke up. Professors, it's a bit too soon to be disappointed. Mike's turn is coming up. You should watch. The one who spoke was Professor Eric. He was a professor in the magic potions department and also Mike's uncle. And right after he spoke, Mike took the stage to begin his test. He had already summoned fire magic into both of his palms and thought to himself, watch carefully, Luin. I don't know what you're plotting, but this is the difference in our power. And as he thought this, the supervising professor at his side announced, begin, Mike. At his signal, Mike immediately thrust his hands forward, controlling his magic to strike the targets. The results were not bad in the slightest. With just a single cast, an incredible number of targets were struck. Even the other students watching from the stands couldn't help but exclaim, whoa, that's Mike for you. He hit so many targets with just one cast, he's definitely taking first place again. Back with Eric, he was now cheerfully boasting to the other professors, how about that? The boy is certainly worthy of the Gary Hill name, isn't he? At this point, Mikkel is truly the pride of our academy. He'll definitely be our representative at this year's grand festival. He bragged so much that a certain big shot sitting next to him had to speak up. All right, Professor Eric, I don't think we need to see any more of this year's batch. This old man is Tyrion Xnit, the headmaster of the academy and a 7th Circle Archmage. Professor Hydo, sitting beside him, saw he was about to leave and quickly said, why don't we stay a little longer? It's Luin's turn. Hearing this, Headmaster Tyrion asked, Luin, as in Luin Adel? Professor Hydo, that kid is still at the academy. Well, for the sake of the boy's passion, it's all right to sit and watch a little longer. And at that very moment, Luin had also stepped onto the field to prepare for the test. All right, this is a good chance to test my strength. Luin thought while cracking his knuckles, his fighting spirit blazing, while the professor on the side, not wanting to waste time, said, Luin, begin. Yes, sir, Luin quickly replied, then began to use his power, creating fireballs in his palms. The crucial thing was that his speed in creating fireballs was terrifyingly fast. It was as if the moment he activated the magic, countless fireballs had already surrounded him. Even the observing professors were stunned. What is that? What's with his casting speed? Turning to the students witnessing Luin's casting speed, they were already breaking out in a sweat. Whoa, how many targets are there? There's no way. Mikkel, who was next to them, heard this and gritted his teeth in annoyance before turning to say, hey, don't you guys know that Luin has mana disorder? Even if he casts 100 times, it's not certain he can even hit a single target. That useless piece of trash can't do anything. Back with Luin, after activating his magic, he immediately dashed forward. At the same time, Luin quickly activated a skill, Time Refraction. Asterisk, asterisk, time refraction activated, distorts and refracts time for 30 seconds. Speed increases by 200% of power, body movements will be faster. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk, you have moved beyond the distorted time. Cooldown, 5 minutes. Asterisk, asterisk. The skill I learned recently is time refraction. It helps me move abnormally fast to any place I want. In other words, I'm like a storm right now, Luin thought as he frantically smashed all the targets. And just a few seconds later, the entire arena floor cracked just from the aftershocks of Luin's movements. And all the professors, including the headmaster and the students watching, were sweating bullets at Luin's performance. At this moment, the supervising instructor at the side announced Luin's results with a trembling voice. Luin successfully took down 27 targets, and right after the instructor announced the results, the other students looked at each other in bewilderment and started to whisper. What was that? Did he cast magic on his hands and then just punch the targets? 27 targets! He just set a new record for the most targets taken down in this test. How could he move so fast? Did he really use magic to hit the targets? The students' voices began to rise one by one. Meanwhile, on the observation deck for the professors, Headmaster Tyrion couldn't help but applaud Luin in praise. Luin is absolutely outstanding, and his words were like a signal for the other students, who immediately joined in with applause. That's right, that was amazing, Luin. Congratulations. And while the crowd was celebrating Luin's result, Mikkel alone was purple with rage. Luin, that brat! How could he? Back to Luin. The words and applause from everyone stirred up many emotions in him. Being praised and acknowledged by everyone is something I haven't experienced in the past 6 years. My chest feels so warm. That's right, this is the feeling I've always wanted, Luin thought happily to himself. The scene changes to the teacher's lounge. At this time, Eric also had some objections to Luin's test. Casting magic on his hands and then punching the targets directly. Are you telling me that's magic? I've never heard of such magic. In response to his statement, Professor Heido on the opposite side calmly said, but as you know, magic has no limits. This is a field where anything can happen. If everything only followed a set framework, it wouldn't be magic anymore. It would be mathematics. After hearing this, Eric was about to object further, but was immediately stopped by Headmaster Tyrion. Then, he said cheerfully, today, I witnessed a student create a miracle of magic. However, it seems the professors have differing opinions on this matter. He said this while observing everyone's faces, and the sourest expression, of course, belonged to Eric. At this moment, he was silently cursing Luin in his heart. This is crazy! That damn Luin has stirred up a mess! Who would have thought this would happen? Back with Luin, his best friend Jason cheerfully threw an arm around his shoulder and shouted to everyone, "Hey, the ultimate magician has arrived!" Hearing this, Luin felt so embarrassed he wanted to crawl into a hole and quickly said, "Hey, stop it." But up ahead, when everyone saw Luin coming, they rushed to greet him. Oh, it's Luin. Luin, hello. How did you do that in the practical exam yesterday? Luin, you know my name, right? We've been in the same class for the past 6 years. They greeted Luin enthusiastically, and this enthusiasm made Luin feel awkward. So, he quickly said to Jason behind him, Jason, I'm heading back first. After saying that, he immediately left. At the same time, Luin was also reflecting on his life. Just yesterday, he was a complete nobody at this school, but in just one night, everything had changed, and he still couldn't get used to it. Of course, there were still plenty of people who didn't like him. With that thought, Luin opened his door. And at that moment, inside his room, Mikkel was already waiting. The moment he saw Luin enter, he said, "There you are." Seeing the blonde guy unexpectedly in his room, Luin asked in a cold tone, "What are you doing in someone else's dorm room?" Instead of answering Luin's question, Mike started sizing him up and then growled, "You got a few points with that thing that's not even magic, and you're already acting all high and mighty? Your arrogance makes me sick, so I came here to remind you not to get ahead of yourself. Isn't it just because you're embarrassed that your score is lower than the guy you've looked down on for 6 years?" Luin retorted sarcastically. And sure enough, his words sent the blonde guy into a rage. Immediately, he grabbed Luin by the collar and shouted, "What did you say?" This bastard turned to face Luin, and seeing the blonde guy act like a rabid dog, Luin calmly grabbed his hand and twisted it aside. Mike tried to yank his hand free, but to no avail. Luin's grip was like a steel clamp, holding him fast. What the hell? How is this loser so strong? Mike thought anxiously. Just then, Luin leaned in close to his face and said, "Mike, we both need to graduate. If you're that desperate to pick a fight with me, then wait until the one-on-one combat exam and we can have a fair match." After saying that, he let go. At this, Mike shouted, "You think you're worthy of fighting me? A failure who flunks every subject? Just you wait, you'll find out soon enough," Luin said coldly. "Worry about passing the next exam first." With that, Mike turned and stormed off, cursing Luin under his breath. That arrogant bastard. There's no way he won't fail today's practical exam, let alone the combat test. Is that guy even a mage? Mike wondered, staring at his still trembling hand. the scene shifts to the location of the second practical exam, Mana Performance Measurement. Before the student stood an incredibly impressive golem statue. No matter how many times I see this statue, it never fails to impress me, someone exclaimed. The statue was indeed an extremely valuable artifact. It was the Academy's treasure, a rare artifact of which only a few existed on the entire continent. Its full name was Kingrum, the ancient golem. 500 years ago, the Archmage Frost turned the living golem Kingrum into an artifact. Imprisoned within it, Kingrum absorbs mana and serves as a magical punching bag. The mana performance test requires students to cast spells on Kingrum to earn points. So we just have to cast our most confident spell at that statue? Luin asked his friend, Gia-san. This was because it was his first time taking this exam. Hearing his question, Gia-san replied, "That's right, but that golem is known for being a ridiculously harsh grader. Getting a score above 20 is considered really good." While they were talking, a student across from them began their attack using lightning magic, Lightning Storm. The student yelled, unleashing a bolt of purple lightning directly at the statue. But even though its power and effects looked decent, it was unfortunately not enough to please Kingrum the golem. "Start over, Mage. 1 point. It's not too late to drop out," Kingrum said mockingly. The first contestant getting a score of 1 immediately made the other students nervous. "I thought he did a good job. I guess it's not going to be easy. This is unbelievable." The student dejectedly returned to his spot as Kingram called out again, "Next, step forward." A female student heard the call and laughed. "Haha, my turn, is it? Watch closely. Ice ball." With that, she cast her ice magic, launching an ice ball straight at the statue. Immediately after, Kingrum gave its response. I certainly won't forget you. That was impressive." "Really?" the girl asked joyfully. "Yes. It's the first time I've seen such trashy magic." 2 points, Kingrum stated coldly. The score brought the girl to tears. "No way. I did the best I could." It seemed all her previous confidence evaporated at that score. Next up was Gia-sun, but his results weren't much better. 5 points. "Get out of my sight. What is this watered-down magic? Did you mix it with water or something? What the hell? That was 100% pure mana. You damn golem!" Gia-san yelled furiously. Seeing this, the nearby proctor quickly interjected, "Gia-san, that's enough shouting. Return to your spot." Next up, Nicole Gary Hill. Hearing his name, Mike quickly stepped forward. He then unleashed his most powerful spell, Ice Magic, firing it directly at the Kingrum statue. But all that awaited him were the golem's disappointed words. "Gary Hill, I'm rather disappointed. Are you truly the son of George Gary Hill?" Hearing this, M arrogantly said, "That's right, I am the third son of Josh Gary Hill. Proud M. Gary Hill." Kingrum over here almost died laughing. "Ha ha, proud, huh? Your father is a foolish crybaby who begged me for a few more points. Mikari, you are much worse than your stupid father." 27 points. Below, M heard Kingrum's words and shouted, "How dare you, a mere goblin, talk like that?" But before this guy could say more, the supervising professor immediately stood up and demanded, "Silence, student M." Next, Luin Adel. Upon hearing his name called, Luin hurriedly stepped forward. Whoosh! Suddenly, he felt anxious, but he thought, "Let's give it a try. I can do this." While thinking, Luin began to activate fire magic in the palm of his hand. Then, he looked at the statue of Kingrum and introduced himself. "I am Luin Adel. Very pleased to meet you." Turning to Kingrum, he appeared a bit surprised and said, It's the first time I've seen your face. But that's fine. Go ahead with the test." After he said this, Luin didn't wait any longer and began to gather fire magic into his palm to prepare for his strongest attack. Some student recognized the magic he was using and exclaimed, "Is that the fire burst?" After this statement, other students began to chatter. "That's a level 4 magic." "What? He can do that?" Turning to Kingrum, he looked curious as he observed Luin's stance. "What's with your stance?" Hearing this, Luin didn't explain much. After gathering enough firepower, he said, "I'm coming up." With that, Luin jumped straight in front of the statue. Miraculously, he transferred all the magic from his arm down to his right leg and delivered a powerful kick right to its face. This left the supervising professor so astonished that his mouth fell open. No way! How could the boy transfer mana from his hand to his leg and make it explode in an instant? Not just him, but even the other students were wide-eyed. "Didn't you just say that was level 4 magic?" "No. That attack's energy is at least level 5. "So you mean Luin is at least a level 5 mage?" Turning to Luin, he felt confused. What's going on? His fire burst was executed correctly. But why was Kingrum's reaction so strange? Did I make a mistake somewhere? Just as he thought this, the statue of Kingrum across from him darkened and asked, "You, who are you?" Luin, hearing this, was a bit puzzled but replied, "What? I already introduced myself. I am Luin Adel." But before he could finish, Kingrum said something that startled him. "Are you Draa? I've been waiting for you, Draa." This statement from the elf also surprised the other students below. "Draa, who is he talking about?" Is he mistaking Luin for someone? Turning to Luin, he was now worried, having rummaged through related documents for the past 2 months, but found no trace of Draa at all. But unexpectedly, Kingram knew. Thinking of this, Luin asked, "Do you know Draa?" "Yes, yes," Kingram confirmed. Hearing this, Luin quickly asked, "Then can you tell me more about him?" Kingram, hearing him, smiled and said, "Interesting. I never expected to meet his incarnation at this academy. What is your name?" "It's Luin Adel," Luin hurriedly replied. "All right, Luin Ao, I will remember. There are too many people here. I will tell you later." At this moment, the supervising professor's voice also rang out beside him. "Excuse me, before you go, could you tell us how many points?" Hearing this, Kingram coldly replied, "The evaluation ends here. This magic is not something I can assess." Of course, this answer shocked the professor. "What? What are you saying?" "According to the school's rules, you are required to give an evaluation for the students. This pact must be adhered to for 500 years after the great mage Xnit passed away. But unfortunately for the professor, he shouldn't have said anything. After he did, it only made Kingram angrier. "Enough! Do you dare mention the rules in front of me? For all these years, I've been the one to evaluate these kids who look nothing like mages," the supervising professor awkwardly replied. "I apologize." But turning to Kingram, he seemed to realize that the supervising teacher was in a difficult position, so he said, "Forget that guy. I don't care. But a pact is still a pact. I will let you know your points. 1 is no, and 2 is 100. What do you want, little destroyer?" He said this while looking at Luin, who was no fool. "Of course, 100 points," he quickly said. The rumor that Luin received 100 points from the difficult elf had already spread among the students. "Hey, did you hear? Kingram gave 100 points in his exam." "Huh? That Kingram? But for whom?" "I heard he gave it to the legendary giant Luin Adel." Turning to Luin, at this moment, Professor Hido also came to meet him to give him a small reward. "You got into trouble again," Hido said, but there was no hint of reproach. Seeing him approach, Luin was a bit puzzled and asked, "Professor Hido, why are you here?" Hido then stated his purpose. "The news that you received 100 points from Kingram has reached the principal's ears. After learning this, the principal decided to reward you since this is unprecedented. Here, take this first," he said, handing Luin a scroll. Luin hastily unrolled the scroll and murmured, "The treasure vault. What is this?" Hido didn't explain much, simply gesturing for Luin to follow him while saying, "Follow me." He then led Luin down some sort of secret hallway. "Wow, I didn't even know a place like this existed here," Luin said in amazement. "Of course. This is the only restricted area in the entire academy," Hido calmly explained. But this only made our Luin even more curious. The only restricted area in the academy, so why is he bringing me here? He wondered to himself. And not long after, Hido led Luin to a door and said, "This is the way to the treasure vault, and this is as far as I can go." "So I have to go in by myself?" Luin asked nervously. "Yes, go inside. I will wait for you here." Following the professor's instructions, Luin slowly opened the door and stepped inside. "I don't know what will happen, but he said it was a reward, so I might as well see what it is," Luin thought to himself. And at that moment, the scene inside the treasure vault unfolded before his eyes. The room was filled with various artifacts, carefully displayed inside glass cases. "So this is the treasure vault? There are many artifacts here that I've only ever heard of. This must be the treasury of the Archmage, Florian Xnit," Luin thought while observing the artifacts in the room. And while he was still admiring the treasures, a voice suddenly rang out from behind him. "You look so lost, as if you don't realize your own true worth." The voice startled Luin, and he quickly turned towards the source of the sound. And right after, he was astonished to see the large figure in front of him. Kingram? Why is he here? And he's not a stone statue anymore. From Luin's perspective, Kingram's body had returned to its original, fleshy state. Kingram, seeing the surprise on Luin's face, then said, "Surprised that I'm no longer a stone statue? Ah, this is the only place I'm allowed to use this body. Thanks to the ancient mana that fills this room, I can exist in my original form, not just as an artifact." Hearing his explanation, Luin understood everything and said, "I see. But hey, what did you mean when you said I don't know my own true worth?" Kingram listened and then said with a laugh, "It means exactly what it sounds like. You have absolutely no idea what your true value is. Even the magic artifact you're using is similar to Draa's. It's a rare treasure in this world. How did you obtain it? And again, what is your relationship with Draa?" Faced with Kingram's barrage of questions, Luin felt confused himself and asked back, "I've been wondering the same thing. Who exactly is Draa?" After hearing the question, Kingram became thoughtful for a moment and then said, "He was a being who wished to become a god. One day, he visited the Sky Peak tribe where I lived. At that time, he was small and short, quite unsightly to look at. However, his power was so extraordinary that no one in the Sky Peak tribe could stand against him. Moreover, with each passing day, he grew even stronger. So even if we elves attacked him all at once, we couldn't defeat him. We respected him, and he lived with us as a member of our tribe. He taught me, the future chieftain, language and magic for nearly 100 years. Luin's jaw dropped in astonishment upon hearing this. 100 years? How could a human live for 100 years? It's possible, because he wasn't human. His true identity was the Black Dragon, Dracagonia, Kingram said with a smile, and this left Luin endlessly astonished. Unbelievable. So dragons really do exist? Luin thought to himself and asked again, is that true? Yes, don't you know that dragons are the very source of magic? Kingram replied. Hearing this, Luin recalled the knowledge he had learned and began to think. I have indeed heard of this before, but it was just an unsubstantiated claim. I thought it was all just a legend. And while he was thinking, Kingram on the other side continued to speak. However, Draa couldn't use magic, which is why he created a fighting style like yours, by using magic on his hands or feet. Do you understand what that means? So that's how it is. Draa must have been treated like me in the past. Luin thought to himself upon hearing this, then replied, I think I understand a little now. Over here, Kingram continued with the story of how Draa created an ability that only he could use, a way to turn magic into physical power, just like you've done. Wielding that power, Draa became the strongest being in this world. However, he was still not satisfied with that and continued to expand his power infinitely. In the end, he destroyed everything, including himself. Hearing this, Luin's eyes widened. He destroyed everything, so that's why he's known as the World Destroyer. I can't even imagine how strong he must have been to destroy the entire world, Luin thought, his face covered in a cold sweat, and at that same moment, the system sent him a notification. You have earned the achievement. Tracing the footsteps of Draa. Rewards. Asterisk asterisk. Title, Alley of the Elves. Skill, Elven Fury. Spirit Equipment, Incarnation of Strength. Acquired the title Comrade of the Goblins. The title's effect increases the friendship percentage with goblins and allows the user to communicate with them. Turning back to Luin, this sudden notification also surprised him a little. Why did I suddenly get a reward? Communication, huh? Well, it's better than nothing. Thinking this, he glanced over to check the new skill. Goblin's Rage actively borrows power from a Goblin's Fury and instantly increases this power. Strength reaches 300 for 30 seconds. The effect will gradually increase under the influence of the body skill. Cooldown time 3 minutes. From these lines of description, Luin could tell that this seemed to be a buff skill to increase his strength. But what he was more curious about was this gem. It had suddenly appeared in his hand. Trang, the incarnation of strength. What is this thing? Luin wondered to himself, and on the opposite side, Kingram also saw the gem in his hand and said, It seems you've just received a quest reward. Draa used to look into empty space and talk like that too. Hearing this, Luin quickly held out the gem in his hand and asked, In that case, do you know what this is? All right, let me see it. I think it's, Kingram said in surprise. But Luin continued to ask, Do you know anything about this object? An item? It's not an item. It's an incarnation, Kingram explained. And this left Luin completely astonished. What? This thing is an incarnation? Turning back to Kingram, he began to recount what he remembered about this incarnation. He was always by Draa's side. How could I not know? But looking at the current situation, I guess Draa must have sealed him in this spirit stone before he died. He is an incarnation of strength, and although he's called a spirit, he's not like ordinary spirits. He has a fiery temper, always begging Draa for infinite power. But if you satisfy his desires, he will also grant you endless strength. Do you mean that incarnation will be reborn from this stone? Luin asked curiously. Yes, so you don't need to worry too much. It seems he's about to awaken. And right after Kingram's words, the stone in Luin's hand began to crack. And in the end, what appeared in Luin's hand was a tiny brown bear. Huh? A bear? Luin said in amazement, looking at the tiny creature. At that moment, the bear in his hand rubbed its eyes and grumbled. Brat, you dare call me a bear? Turning back to Luin, the fact that this bear could talk astonished him even more. This bear can even talk. How can a bear talk? Hearing this, the little bear got furious and said, Stop calling me a bear, you little punk, the little bear said while pointing directly at Luin. Our protagonist, as if he couldn't hear the little bear's complaint, continued to wonder, how can a bear talk? And this remark of his unintentionally made the little bear even angrier. Hey, are you deaf? How dare you compare me to those things? I'm not a bear. If not a bear, then what are you? Luin asked curiously. The little bear, on the other hand, boasted confidently, I am an incarnation. I can become whatever I want to be. And as if to make Luin believe him, he prepared to use his power. Watch this. I'll show you my power. Luin on the other side held his breath in anticipation, and the result of his waiting was that nothing happened at all. The little bear started shaking all over like it had to take a dump. Then it cried out in panic. Huh? What is this? Where's my power? I must have been reborn with an empty stomach. Give me food, the little bear ordered. And this bossy attitude made Luin think for a moment. Why is this bear so rude? Thinking this, he delivered some bad news to it. There's no food here, and I don't even know what you eat. This information from Luin shocked the little bear even more. What? Not even any food? Why is my master so weak this time? Master me? Luin asked curiously. But unfortunately for him, the little bear couldn't be bothered to pay attention anymore. Whatever, I'm sleepy now. Just remember to call me when it's time to eat. After saying that, it curled up into a ball and started snoring loudly. Meanwhile, Kingrum, who was watching from the side, could only laugh. Hehe, a leopard never changes its spots. Seeing you with Trang reminds me so much of the old days, remembering the days of facing off against Stang and Draa in the old place. Back when we were in the Xnit tribe, Luin Adel, the little destroyer who carries Draa's will, what do you plan to do? Hearing this, Luin asked in confusion. About what? Hearing his question, Kingrum explained, the power you now hold will make you stronger. It can lead you down the right path, or it can devour you whole. I'll ask you again, with a plan to become stronger, what will you do? Following his words, Luin began to think seriously about this issue. The reason I want this power is to protect everyone from monsters, to bring honor to my family name. It's to prove myself to those who look down on me. Yes, that's enough. I have too much to protect. I can't let this opportunity slip away. With this in mind, Luin found his answer and said, I will live as I wish for my loved ones, my family, and myself. Not bad. I will look forward to that future of yours, Kingrum said with a smile. Time passed by quickly. The scene shifts to the training grounds. At this moment, Luin was recapping the events he had gone through. I've learned more about Draa thanks to Kingrum, and each passing day still begins with quests. The only thing that's changed is feeding Trang, Luin thought, glancing at the little bear climbing on him. This little guy is crazy about food, and he eats a ton. As Luin watched, Trang immediately opened its small mouth wide and started absorbing all the flames on his hands into its belly. I feel much better now, Trang said cheerfully after letting out a loud burp. The food Luin was talking about was the power he gained from missions. Trang would eat his power, Trang's current stats. Trang, the embodiment of one-star power, the only spirit that reacts to the primordial essence of power. Its power is proportional to its vessel. The larger the vessel, the greater the power. It once challenged the 7-star kings alongside the black dragon Dracagonia and was destroyed. 1 star, special companion skill. You share 100% of Trang's growth. The companion skill grants the user 100 strength points, and thanks to this skill, Luin's strength has increased significantly. Getting back to the story, Luin turned to Trang and asked, every time you get stronger, I get a maximum of 100 strength points? Hearing this, the little bear Trang explained, if I reach 2 stars, it will be 200, 3 stars will be 300, and it keeps increasing like that. Before I was sealed, I had over 31 stars. Luin felt his scalp tingle after hearing that. 31 stars, 3,100 strength points. I'm not even at 1,000 points, and I'm already this strong. Thinking about it, he started craving all those strength points and asked, how did Dracagonia manage that? Is there any other way to increase my strength besides missions? Trang, who was sitting on his shoulder, gave our protagonist a sly look and chuckled. Heh, so you finally realize my worth, huh? If you want to know, buy me a drink. But unfortunately for the little bear, Luin wasn't one to be trifled with. He immediately shot the tiny bear a cold glare and said, fine, don't tell me, but don't blame me when you're starving. The little bear had no choice but to surrender, saying, all right, I'll tell you. There are many ways to increase your strength, like taking on higher difficulty missions for better rewards, crafting items that boost strength, searching for treasures, or even brewing elixirs from goblin sinew. But none of those methods are right for you. Why not? There are so many options, Luin asked, confused. Trang slowly began to enlighten him. You need at least 1,000 strength points to even attempt those methods. Your strength is increasing too fast. Your body won't be able to handle it. You're basically at the toddler stage right now. Back to Luin. His expression turned serious after hearing this. And here I was, thinking I'd gotten strong, but it turns out I'm just getting started. My goal now is to reach 1,000 strength points. Luin resolved to himself. And just like that, his training began again. I have to keep training just as I have been. He trained every day to increase his strength, and when it reached 930 points, the third test, practical combat, had officially begun. Now, at the test site, the little bear Trang turned to ask him, you have a combat evaluation today? Yeah, I've been waiting a long time for this, Luin said with a smile. In the practical combat test, mages typically attack from the rear, so there's a chance their spells could hit allies in the chaos. This test was designed to evaluate a mage's risk management skills, which might be the most crucial part of all. And as he was contemplating this, his close friend Gia Son was in the middle of his own test. Fireball! Gia Son yelled, launching his spell forward. And as a result, the spell seemed to have a mind of its own. It instantly dodged the monster and flew straight at the knights, causing them to shout in alarm, Whoa, what are you doing? Don't aim at us. The supervising instructor who witnessed this could only sigh and say, Sigh, Giasone, you're disqualified. Yes, sir, Giasone said, dejected, and walked off the field to the mocking laughter of the other students. The knights participating in the test were members of the Foreign Knight Order. They were there to assist with the exam, ensuring student safety and evaluating the coordination between both parties. The test was set to last for 10 days. Based on their scores, each student would face different monsters. On the final day, a total of 13 students with the top scores remained. Since it was the last day, everyone was curious about what kind of monster would appear. It wasn't long before the students' questions were answered when a loud roar echoed around them. Then, a massive, humanoid creature appeared before everyone. Is that an ORC? Someone yelled. ORCs live in scattered tribes across the continent. They are several times larger than humans, and their intelligence is just as formidable. They are violent by nature, so conflicts between ORCs and humans are common. And the appearance of this absolute beast of a monster made the students break out in a cold sweat. Professor, are you sure this is safe? What if someone gets killed by the ORC? The students' anxious voices started to rise. Professor Haido, standing nearby, calmly explained, You are all mages, so you must always remain logical. Treat this as a real situation and give it your all. Yes, sir, the students answered in unison, though it was unclear if they felt any more confident. Back on the field, the test had now officially begun. The moment it was unleashed, this massive beast charged forward like a tank. Then, it used its shoulder to charge directly at the knights, forcing them to quickly raise their shields to block. And while the group was holding back this huge beast, Mike, who was in the back, began to use his ice magic. Ice spear! He shouted, then started casting his spell and shot countless ice shards forward. But one could only say that this orc was too skilled in combat. It immediately realized it needed to take out Maiko first. So, it stomped its foot hard on the ground and leaped straight towards Maiko, who was far in the back, much to everyone's astonishment. Perhaps they didn't think this orc's jumping power was so strong, and Professor Haido, who was observing from the side, also shouted worriedly, Mike, get out of the way! But unfortunately, his concern went unanswered. Because this guy Mike was frozen stiff with fear. I have to get revenge for what happened the other day, but this fear is paralyzing me, he thought with a tremble as he stood rooted to the spot. There was no other choice. Haido had to use his magic to save this coward's life. Forest prison, Haido muttered, and right after that, countless giant vines shot up in front of Miko, tightly binding the orc before it could smash Miko's face in. But this orc was incredibly ferocious, and even though it was tied up, it still tried to reach for the blondie, roaring in anger at the same time. Seeing it roar like that, Miko was so scared he couldn't even stand steady anymore. And the result of this pathetic performance was Haido's cold voice. Miko, you are eliminated. Meanwhile, up in the observation deck for the teachers, his Uncle Elk angrily slammed his fist on the seat and thought, Damn it, he failed again. Mike, I'll have to interfere with Luin's test. With this in mind, he immediately voiced his opinion to the headmaster sitting next to him. Ah, headmaster, do you intend to continue the exam? Hearing this, Headmaster Tyrion turned to ask curiously, What do you mean? Elk then revealed his intentions. It's student Luin's turn next, isn't it? Luin is the only one who received a perfect score from Kingram. If we evaluate the other students the same way as Luin, it would be a bit unfair, don't you think? After listening, Tyrion stroked his beard and said, I understand your point, but we don't have any other monsters. No, we do. When the foreign knight squad brought the orc, they also brought a goblin with them. Using a goblin for the exam is extremely dangerous. But with Professor Haido present and the line of knights on the front lines, I'm really curious about Luin's abilities. Back to Luin, as he was heading out to the field, he ran into Professor Haido, who was already waiting there. When Haido saw him approaching, he warned him, Luin, I need to tell you something before the exam begins. For today's test, your part will be harder than everyone else's. The students have high expectations of you since Kingram gave you a perfect score. Many people said it would be unfair to have you fight the same monster as everyone else, so your test will be more difficult. Hearing this, Luin asked with curiosity. More difficult means your target won't be an orc. You'll have to fight a goblin. Sure enough, right after Haido said this, Luin was startled. Even Trang by his side was a little surprised, then said with interest, Aha, so your first real enemy is a goblin? This is going to be fun to watch. Back at the arena, after the goblin was brought out, it began to roar, threatening the students around it. That clueless Jia-sun, not knowing what this creature was, asked, Is that the orc chief? His friend next to him heard this and said, You idiot, that's a goblin, no way. Jia-san thought worriedly, turning towards the captain of the night squad. At that moment, the captain was so anxious he was gripping his sword tightly. It's true I made the suggestion, but there's no way they'd let a student fight a goblin in an exam like this. How strong can a student possibly be? Goblins have a similar appearance to orcs, but they are much stronger. They can crush a person's skull and break their spine in a single swing. Thinking this, he couldn't contain his worry and turned to ask Hido, "Are you sure about this? Even knights have a hard time capturing them." After hearing this, Hido calmly explained, "I'm sure. Those are the headmaster's orders." Hearing Hido's words, the knight could only give a wry smile. "Ha! You must be betting your life on this test, huh?" "Yes, I'm betting my own life on it," Hido said seriously. And just as the two of them were talking, the sound of footsteps from behind caught the knight's attention. He turned his head and asked, "Huh, are you Luin?" Hearing his question, Luin introduced himself. "I am Luin Adel, the test candidate." After hearing this, the knight looked at Luin with some doubt. "You?" After speaking, he thought to himself, "This kid is going to fight a goblin. How can he possibly fight this goblin? The professor and I will protect him." But where is he going? The captain wondered as he saw Luin start to walk forward. He immediately rushed to stop him. "Hey, you're going the wrong way. What are you doing? You're in the wrong position for the test. You're supposed to be in the back." Luin heard him and turned around to reply. And despite his words, Luin insisted, "I'll stand here. My spell is a little bit different." Hearing this, the captain's expression grew serious and he said, "If you stand in front, we can't cover you. It's not as easy to deal with as an orc." "Yes, I know," Luin said calmly. The captain listened, then paused thoughtfully for a moment before asking, "Why would you joke around with your own life like that?" And in response to his question, Luin confidently tossed his coat behind him and said, "It was the only way." "I don't see a hint of fear in him. He must be something special," the captain thought to himself. Just then, from behind them, the two-headed professor spoke up. "Luin, get ready. Your test officially begins now." As he spoke, he snapped his fingers to give the signal, and immediately, the chains binding the ogre were released. And just as expected, the moment it was let loose, the ogre charged at them like a bulldozer. Seeing this, the knights in front hurriedly raised their shields to block. But at that very moment, Luin, from behind them, activated fire magic in the palm of his hand and charged straight ahead. The captain saw this, broke into a cold sweat, and yelled, "Hey, what are you doing?" At this point, he couldn't help but worry about Luin. He's daring to face the ogre head-on? What on earth is he planning to do? He thought, his eyes fixed on the scene of the large and small figures rushing towards one another. The moment it saw this tiny creature rushing towards it, the ogre pulled its arm back to gather power and then threw a heavy punch forward. And on the opposite side, Luin simultaneously threw his own fist of fire. The moment the two fists collided, it created a powerful shockwave. The captain beside them couldn't believe his eyes. Is he seriously using a melee spell in this situation? A student daring to fight an ogre in close combat? "I hope he's still alive," he said, peering intently into the thick cloud of dust ahead. Then, as the dust began to settle, he saw the image of Luin still standing as if nothing had happened. He's alive? He's even still on his feet. The captain thought in amazement, while the two-headed professor behind him watched this scene with a satisfied smile. After calming down a bit, he patted Luin on the shoulder and yelled, "Hey, you should have given us a heads up. You were almost a goner." Luin knew the captain was worried about him, so he just said softly, "I'm sorry, but if I had told you beforehand, would you have let me charge in?" And this remark truly took the knight by surprise. But before he could even react, Luin continued, "We don't have time to talk right now. Let's hurry up and finish this test." He said this while looking at the furious ogre in front of them. Its eyes were now glowing red, as if it could explode at any moment. Seeing this, the captain knew the monster was about to go berserk, so he quickly said, "Fall back. I know you're strong, but this thing is extremely dangerous. Stay put and let me handle it." And in response to his request, Luin actually took a few steps ahead of him and said, "This is my test. Please let me complete it." He spoke with an incredibly serious tone. I didn't even know what it was. An ogre 5 times my size. Yet here I am, facing it. There are 2 reasons I can be this brave. One is because of my ogre-related skills, a title that increases friendliness with ogres, a title that helps communicate with ogres. The title I got from Kingram allows me to talk to ogres. I understand what it's screaming. "Don't come any closer. You guys have to set me free." That's what it's saying. To others, it's a ferocious monster, but not to me. This ogre is terrified because it's surrounded by mages and knights. The second reason is this quest. Urgent quest. It's time to fight. This is an unavoidable enemy. Conquer the enemy faster than anyone else. Objective 1. Attack the enemy first. Objective 2. Defeat the enemy. Reward, plus 30 strength. Skill, player's eye. When Luin saw this quest, he was overjoyed. What a worthy reward for me. I have to repeat the same boring quest every single day. Getting points equal to 3 days combined in just one quest. So what's there to hesitate about? Luin said as he charged forward to attack it first, and as a result, the system immediately announced that Objective 1, attack the enemy first, was complete. Seeing this, Luin smiled and said, "It's not over yet." At that moment, the ogre in front of him flew into a rage. "I'll kill you." As it spoke, it began to leap up, lunging straight at Luin. It looked like it was about to execute a sledgehammer blow from above. "I'll smash your head!" It roared furiously and slammed its fists straight down. But unfortunately for it, Luin managed to jump back in time to dodge the attack. But this monster's brute stamina was making things a bit difficult for Luin. "I have to find its weak spot," Luin thought to himself and began using the Time Refraction skill to charge in and attack. "I need to get close and aim for its weak spot," Luin told himself, and then he started to accelerate, dashing straight towards the monster. And with lightning speed, Luin landed an explosive punch right in its stomach before it could even react. The knights behind him were astonished. He didn't even flinch in front of the ogre. Just what in the world is this guy? And as he was thinking this, the ogre in front began its counterattack. It immediately threw a punch straight at Luin, but he blocked it with his hand. But it seemed to be a rather heavy blow, as Luin let out a small cry of pain from blocking it. But it wasn't over yet. With its right hand blocked, the ogre immediately threw a punch with its left. Luin also reacted quickly, immediately using his left hand to block. Then, the goblin wrenched its arm free and swung its pipe-like arm straight at Luin. And once again, Luin raised his knee to block the blow. But this time, the goblin had learned its lesson. The moment Luin lifted his leg, it swiftly grabbed it and threw him backward. But luckily for Luin, thanks to his training, his body had now become incredibly agile. While still in midair, he performed a somersault and used his feet to land on the wall behind him. But before Luin could even regain his balance, the goblin in front of him charged forward like a machine and threw a punch right at him. The wall exploded on impact with the fist. Luckily, Luin dodged just in time, or he would have been turned into meat paste. Seeing Luin dodge its attacks time and time again without daring to fight directly, the goblin began to scorn the lowly human. And as soon as it said that, Luin gave it his answer. Instantly, he gathered his momentum and leaped straight towards it, and while the goblin was still reacting, Luin landed a thunderous kick right in the middle of its face, sending it tumbling to the ground. Seizing the opportunity, Luin landed on its chest, causing the monster to cough in pain a few times. "It's time to end this," Luin thought to himself, and began to use the skill Goblin's Fury. His power increased for 30 seconds. His fist began to glow crimson after activating the skill, and the goblin beneath him started to feel afraid. "Are you really a human?" it asked in bewilderment. "I don't think you need an answer, do you?" Luin replied calmly. This greatly surprised the goblin. "You understand what I'm saying. You understand me too, don't you?" Luin said with a smile. The goblin was about to say something else, but before it could, Luin slammed his strongest magic, Tyrant's Fire, straight into the large creature's face. Not only that, but the blow was amplified by the Fury effect, causing his body to enter a berserk state. It was so powerful that Luin himself felt a significant recoil, making him grit his teeth in pain. As for the goblin underneath, needless to say, it had taken more than enough. Besides the floor beneath its back cracking from Luin's punch, its entire body was charred and smelled like barbecue. Seeing that the goblin was no longer moving, Luin slowly stood up and thought, "Is it over?" Meanwhile, after watching Luin's battle, Trang had to praise him inwardly. "Not bad, huh? It even exceeded my expectations. And it wasn't just the little bear." The other students were so astonished their jaws dropped. "Did he take down the goblin?" "I think so. That's insane. Let's go. Luin is so freaking cool." The students started cheering for him as if they'd hit the jackpot, and the more Luin won, the more annoyed Eric became. "I can't believe he actually won." And in contrast to his sour face, Headmaster Tyrion was extremely pleased. Just one look at his face showed how satisfied he was. Back in the arena, the knights were now gathered in groups near the goblin's body, discussing it. He really defeated a goblin all by himself. How is that possible? And Luin's combat ability made the captain of the knights unable to contain his curiosity, so he asked, "Luin Adel, who taught you your spells and fighting skills?" "No one," Luin said calmly. "So you learned it all by yourself?" "That's right," Luin said with certainty. Then, he turned to look at Hydor and asked, "Professor, how did I do on my exam?" Hearing his question, Professor Hydor pondered for a moment before saying, "I thought you wouldn't be able to handle it, but I didn't even have a chance to stop you. You always exceed my expectations. Congratulations on passing." After he said that, the entire arena echoed with cheers congratulating Luin, and Luin let out a very satisfied smile. Then, the quest completion notification screen appeared. Quest complete. Urgent quest. Objective 1, attack the enemy first. Objective 2, defeat the enemy. Skill reward, Player's Eye, Strength plus 30. Player's Eye, active maximum. With Player's Eye, you have the ability to see through the essence of all things. You can collect and digitize all information, unlock the stealth skill, and see others even when they are invisible. Luin was a bit dazed by the information about this skill, and after seeing Luin receive this skill, the little bear Trang happily said, "Player's Eye, huh? Now you've become a real player." Hearing Trang say that, Luin became a little curious and asked, "You know about this skill?" Of course, it's something only players possess. You can see enemies who are using stealth abilities. A faint outline will appear around them. That's pretty useful, isn't it? Luin said cheerfully. Right after that, the system displayed another notification, minimap unlocked. Trang, who was beside him, knew Luin didn't understand what this was, so it explained, this function allows you to observe everything within a 500-meter radius of your position. Next, the system issued another notification. You can view the status window of any target. The amount of information accessed depends on the target's level. Turning back to Trang, it now had its arms crossed and was smiling. There are still many surprises. Look at that fainted elf and activate the identification skill. Look at that elf, Luin mumbled and decided to give it a try. And right after he activated this skill, a system information panel appeared before him. What is this? I can see the status of the target. Luin was astonished as he read the information about this elf. The elf warrior hails from the Stormblade Mountain, known for its shoulders covered in blades, smaller, less aggressive, and weaker than typical elves. Upon seeing this information panel, Luin couldn't help but praise it. This is amazing. Thinking of this, he had an idea and turned his gaze towards Professor Hido. Let's try looking at Professor Hido. And soon after, the information about Professor Hido appeared before him. Hido, level 6 mage. Unreadable. So there are things I can't read. The information is restricted. Of course, you can't read the information of someone who is significantly above your level. Once you become stronger, the amount of information you can access will increase, Trang calmly explained. Hearing this, Luin smiled and said, I understand now. Not long after, once the practical test concluded, rumors about Luin defeating the elf spread throughout the academy. At that moment, his close friend Jia-sun also asked about his feelings. Luin, how do you feel about everyone talking about you? Luin casually replied, I don't know. It was my first experience. While they were talking, a female voice from behind Luin caught his attention. Excuse me, are you Senior Luin? You were really cool in the third test. Here, when you're hungry, take this to eat, the three girls said as they handed Luin a few small bags, probably containing food. After giving them, they immediately ran away, embarrassed. It's a pity for these three girls that they expressed their feelings for the wrong person. Because just after they left, Luin handed the bag they gave him to Jia-san beside him and said, Do you want to eat this? And with someone as experienced in interacting with girls as Jia-sun, after seeing Luin's action, he truly couldn't accept it. What? You're not respecting the ladies who struggled with embarrassment to make lunch for you, Jia-sun said angrily. Meanwhile, Luin was still unaware of his actions and asked back, Why are you so worked up about it? At this point, Luin stared at Gia-san and thought, this guy Gia-san, when I used the identification skill, the status window said he has great potential. John Damon, level 2 mage, high potential. Over the past few days, I've checked the status of everyone, and only Mikkel and John currently show high potential. Thinking of this, not wanting his friend to waste his talent, he decided to remind him, Gia-san, try a little harder. In the next test, I'm sure you'll do well. What? Are you feeling sympathetic towards me? Gia-san said irritably. Luin hurriedly explained back. Sympathy? What sympathy? I mean, you have a lot of potential. Your skills are fine. You should regain your confidence and work harder. Don't just play around. Hearing this, Gia-san sighed and said, Okay, fine. In the next test, my goal is to make it into the top 10. In light of this lofty goal from his friend, even though he didn't want to, Luin still had to speak honestly to remind him of his place. That might be a bit difficult. Turning to Gia-sun, his face now showed seriousness as he said, Are you really serious? Sometimes I can't even believe it myself. I wonder if you are the Luin I've known for the past 6 years. Luin, hearing this, looked up at the sky and contemplated life. Yeah, sometimes I find it hard to believe too, so I understand how he feels. While he was still gazing at the clouds, Gia-sun continued, Oh, right. There have been some rumors about you lately. People are saying you will surpass Mikkel, not only becoming the top student, but also the representative of the academy. Hearing this, Luin stood up and said, I don't care about that. Let's go inside. Gia-sun hurriedly followed and asked, What do you mean you don't care? This year is the year of the Grand Festival. The Grand Festival mentioned by Gia-sun is a special event. Every May, representatives from famous academies gather together, and a magical festival is held to select the best. And every 8 years, all mages will attend the Olympiad to choose the strongest. The Grand Festival takes place in the year when both events occur. The Grand Festival is a nationwide competition where the most promising students from various academies showcase their abilities. The winner of the Grand Festival not only brings home a large sum of money for themselves and their academy, but also receives numerous privileges. That's why the number of students participating in the Grand Festival is limited. 1 individual competition and 30 group competitions. The 31 top students from each academy will participate in this grand competition, and the individuals competing in the grand festival will represent their academy. Transitioning to the dining hall for students, at this moment, everyone began discussing the upcoming grand festival. I wonder who the academy's representative will be this year. It must be Mikkel again, right? And in response to their words, Jia-sun immediately voiced his thoughts. Of course, it will be Luin as the representative. The others at the table agreed and said, "That's true. He's the only one who got a perfect 100 from Kingram, you know." Turning to Jason's son, he also said with a bored tone, "As I recall, every time Mikkel participated in the Magic tournament, do you guys remember how he performed?" "Yeah, I remember. The team competition was whatever, but in the individual rounds, he placed in the bottom fifth. That's why we're called a B-rank academy." A B-rank academy. An academy that sucks at team competitions and can't do anything in the individual ones either. The only way for us to get rid of that nickname is Luin. You guys agree, right? Jason's son said. "Totally. Luin, what do you think?" Hearing them, Luin remained calm and said, "The test isn't over yet. It seems Luin is keeping a very level head. Now is not the time to get arrogant or excited. After all, the person chosen to participate in the grand festival will be the one who ranks first in the test and receives recommendations from the professors. And the fourth test? The one-on-one fight between me and Mikkel is coming up. That's why I have to focus on the next test. Right now, all I can think about is beating him to a pulp." Time passed quickly. 4 days after the combat test, Luin was still training his butt off on the training grounds. And thanks to his relentless efforts, the system gave him some good news. "You have reached 1,000 strength points. You have received the title Apprenticeship Complete. Regular quests have been upgraded to level 2, quest difficulty has doubled, and reward value has tripled." Beside him, Trang also saw the notification, so it started stretching and cracking its neck to warm up, saying, "I've finally been waiting for this day. Let's level up right now." After saying that, Trang bent its knees to gain momentum and leaped straight onto Luin's shoulder. Then, it opened its mouth wide and inhaled all the flames surrounding Luin into its belly. And after swallowing all the flames, Trang itself seemed to undergo some kind of mutation as its entire body began to erupt with incredible power. Meanwhile, Mikkel's uncle, Elk, was currently cursing Luin in his mind. "Damn it, I ended up having to give him more points. With Luin Adel's current strength, can Mikkel even beat that guy? Probably not. If Luin wins, Mikkel's spot in the Grand Festival and his title as valedictorian will both be at risk. The Gary Hill family must remain at the top of this academy at all costs." Thinking this, he gritted his teeth as if making a firm decision. Back to Trang. After swallowing Luin's flames, it had also leveled up. Trang, Incarnation of Strength, has reached level 2. Reward receives strength, plus 200. After seeing this notification, Luin looked at Trang and said, "Trang, you look a lot stronger. Well, thanks to you, I reached 1,200 strength points this quickly." Hearing Luin's praise, Trang's face tilted up smugly as it said, "This is just the beginning. The difficulty and rewards of the quests have increased. Let's see." As they spoke, they both started looking at the new quest screen. Regular quest physical training 2. Your physique meets combat standards, but training is never enough. Keep striving. Over 5,000 air punches, over 5,000 spinning kicks, run 15 kilometers, complete over 1 practical combat training session. Reward strength plus 30. After looking at the quest requirements, Luin was a bit confused and said, "I've already increased my training intensity, so it doesn't seem too hard. But what's that practical combat training?" He said this while turning to Trang, waiting for the bear to explain. And just as Luin hoped, Trang began to enlighten him. "Remember the first time we met? I said I could turn into anything. From now on, I can transform, but there are still limits." "Oh really?" Luin heard this and immediately asked, "So, can you turn into a human?" "Yes, but only when I reach level 5, and turning into a human is very difficult. But I can turn into other things." Luin said, "Want to give it a try?" After speaking, Trang immediately began its transformation process. It started spinning its body like a top, and while spinning, its body slowly transformed. Then, as its speed slowed down, a completely different shape appeared before Luin's eyes. "This is just a scarecrow," Luin said disappointedly. Sensing the disappointment in Luin's voice, Trang angrily said, "What's with that expression? It's nothing. It's just not what I imagined," Luin said calmly. But the more nonchalant he acted, the angrier Trang became. "Don't you dare look down on this scarecrow. Back when Draa first started training, I was the one who assisted him." Hearing this, Luin said, "Sparring? You mean you acted as the target, right?" "Exactly. I'm very useful for the quest. So, I have to do practical combat training with you every day?" Luin asked. "That's right. My power is still weak now, so I'm only on par with a 3rd-tier mage. Once I regain my strength, I can handle anything. Then, whether it's a dragon or a demon, I can take them all on." Hearing this, Luin felt a bit interested and said, "Then let's switch now." "So what do you want me to turn into?" Trang said confidently. Luin immediately voiced the first thought that came to his mind. A mage. Oh ho, all right then. Trang let out a menacing laugh, then used its power to create some kind of staff. And before the match started, Trang explained further. Even if you land a hit, it will only cause a shock, not actual damage. Hearing this, Luin asked in return, what about you? Not a scratch? Trang confidently said. Hearing this made Luin understand. So that's it, truly an ideal training partner. And while he was thinking this, Chang in front had already begun to launch an attack. All right, bring it on, Trang said, as he started to activate a type of fire magic and shot it straight at Luin. Seeing this, Luin quickly dodged to the side, while thinking to himself, Mo must be training right now. I can't wait any longer. And completely contrary to Luin's thoughts, Mikosel was not training at all. Instead, he was sitting there watching the leaves and complaining, that damn kid is really getting on my nerves, what should I do now? Hearing his nephew say that, Eric became angry and said, Don, you dare to speak like that in front of me. If you were just a bit stronger then. But before Eric could finish, his nephew interrupted. Stop right there. I heard that because of you, that Luin got his scores boosted, right? Eric was taken aback. Meanwhile, Mike continued, what else could it be? You're the one who set up that elf thing. Thanks to you, he got a perfect score. If our family finds out, I think you won't have an easy time. The nephew spoke to his uncle in a threatening tone. This attitude made Eric start to feel worried. Don, do you dare to talk to me like that? Miko, hearing this, felt no fear at all, and he slowly moved closer and said, then stop whining and think of a way to solve this. If he becomes the Academy's representative then, but he hadn't finished his sentence when Eric asserted, no, that's not going to happen. I have an idea, take this, he said while handing Mo a small glass vial containing some kind of herb. This is the Nianthio flower, a type of awakening herb, Mike said while staring intently at the vial. The Nianthio flower grows in the northern Illusion region. This is a rare herb. Some people use it to concoct special elixirs. If you drink this, you'll achieve an awakening state, and the time it takes to cast mana will be greatly reduced. Hearing this, Mike added, and it dulls the feeling of pain. Plus, it makes it hard to distinguish between enemies and allies. Uncle Eric laughed and said, exactly. In other words, you won't see anything, just make sure to pay attention in class. Turning to Miko, he also voiced his concern, but why do you want me to drink this? That's right, Eric calmly replied. Mo quickly exclaimed, are you crazy? You don't have the right to speak here. You've already lost to that guy. Do you want to bring shame to this family too? Eric said coldly. On the opposite side, Miko understood this well, but he was still worried and said, but this is too risky. Professor Hato knows exactly how strong I am. If he finds out, it's over for me. In response to his nephew's worry, Eric confidently said, did you forget who I am? Testing for stimulants is my job. Take this. It will help cover your tracks, he said while handing Miko another glass vial. After Mikkel took the vial meant to erase traces, his uncle also instructed him carefully, after drinking the Nianthio flower, then drink this. Don't be afraid, because the Gary Hill lineage can only advance this way. So, will you take it or not? He said with a very cunning expression, while Mo began to struggle with his thoughts. Time quickly passed, and finally, the one-on-one combat exam had arrived at the testing location, the Mana Barrier Square. At this moment, students filled the stands to prepare for the test. As always, whenever the combat test takes place, the testing area is always packed with people. And this is the final battle, Luin versus McColl. As this announcement rang out, both contestants had entered the arena. Luin was now staring intently at Miko, thinking, finally, the final exam has come, facing off directly against Mikkel. Turning to Trang, he reminded Luin, the opponent knows you will specialize in close combat. If he prepares in advance, it could be tough. Hearing this, Luin smiled and said, but what if I can get close to him? Then just one punch will do the trick, Trang confidently replied. While he was talking to Trang, the supervising teacher had walked over to both of them and instructed, to make this test as realistic as possible, the terrain factors are prepared and arranged in a very diverse manner. Are you both ready? Yes, we are, both replied in unison. Turning to Luin, at this moment, upon looking closely, he noticed something a bit different about Mike, making him a little worried. This Mike, his condition seems too abnormal. From Luin's perspective, Mikkel appeared to be hyperactive and wanting to smash something. This made Luin even more suspicious. He doesn't seem arrogant like usual. Something is off. I need to use my insight skill to check what he's up to. Thinking this, Luin began to activate his insight skill to see what this guy was really experiencing. Then shortly after, this skill returned results for Luin to see. Mikkel Gary Hill, 3rd level mage, high potential, ability to cast 2nd level magic, special status, hidden frenzy. After seeing this information, Luin's expression turned slightly grim as he thought, frenzy? I've never seen that state before. Moreover, the system window says it's hidden. Has he done something to conceal the use of illegal substances? Before the test starts, students are checked for prohibited substances. But wait a minute. The person responsible for this test is Professor Ellick. Could he be Michael's uncle? Professor Ellick must have let Michael use something and then covered it up for him. No. While he was pondering this, the supervising professor's voice rang out. Listen up, students. Only one thing is forbidden in this battle, and that is dark magic. You may use any type of magic from the 4 elements, and points will be awarded based on the tier of the magic you use. You don't need to worry about your opponent. Inside this mana barrier hall, the power of magic has been reduced by 99%. That's all. Do you have any further questions? Hearing this, Luin immediately raised his hand. The professor saw him and asked, "What is it, student Luin?" Luin voiced his concern. What happens if one of the participants is caught using a forbidden substance? Mikkel, on the opposite side, flinched when he heard the question. The professor calmly explained, that student will be disqualified from the match and will fail this test. It could also lead to expulsion, depending on the severity of the issue. But why do you ask? It's nothing, sir, Luin said calmly, then glanced over at Mikkel, making him even more nervous. He then turned back to the professor acting as the referee. Seeing that neither contestant had any further questions, he announced, "Take your positions." At his command, both of them started moving to their respective sides of the arena. Meanwhile, Luin thought to himself, for now, that's the only conclusion I can draw. And since I'm the only one who can see the status window, no one will believe me. I have to find proof. Just as he was thinking this, the referee professor announced in a loud voice, "Ready, begin." Immediately after he spoke, the 2 contestants charged at each other. The one to strike first was Mikkel. "Luin, go to hell!" he roared, and began to use a spell quite similar to the one Professor Hito had used before. It created vines on the ground that wrapped tightly around Luin's legs, momentarily throwing off his movement, but only for a moment. With Luin's physically trained body, it only took a little bit of force to snap them in 2. This brutal method of escape left the other students gasping in amazement. What was that? How did he break free so fast? Did Mikkel's spell have no effect on Luin? Back to Luin, he was overjoyed. Awesome, the mana barrier hall reduces the contestant's mana power, but my physical strength is completely unaffected. As Luin thought this, he charged straight at Mikkel to give him a beatdown. But Mikkel was still raring to go. The moment he saw Luin charging, he laughed out loud. "You think that's all I've got?" Crimson Flame. As he spoke, he began to use his magic to create a giant skull with flames inside. And as soon as Luin got into range, the skull began to spew fire relentlessly at him. Luin wasn't stupid enough to take it head on. He immediately leaped backward to temporarily evade the attack. He then hauled ass over to a rock outcropping to take cover from the skull's flames. The fire from that skull was intense. If not for the rock's cover, Luin would have been instantly turned into barbecue. Luin had to wait until the skull's flames weakened a bit before he dared to peek out and analyze the situation. Reduced casting time and increased mana. Those are the effects of the potion Mikkel used. Back with Mikkel, seeing Luin scurrying away from his attacks like a rat, he burst out laughing. "Haha, stop hiding. Come out and face me, you rabbit." Meanwhile, Luin ignored his taunts and continued to rack his brain, trying to see if any herb matched those effects. I can see he's more hyped up than usual. That potion must be the igniting awakening herb. And seeing Mikkel's trembling state, he became even more certain of his suspicion. Trembling hands, extreme excitement, reduced pain sensitivity, and difficulty distinguishing between friend and foe. It's all too obvious. The only side effect that hasn't appeared yet is the pain suppression. Thinking this, Luin confidently stepped out and said, "No wonder you're so confident. It's because of that stuff, isn't it?" Hearing this, Mikkel looked a bit confused and asked, "What?" Luin just said coldly, igniting fire. And just as he predicted, Mikkel's face became extremely anxious when he heard those words. Back with Luin, now that he knew what trick this guy was using, he was no longer worried. "It doesn't matter. To take you down, I don't need stuff like that. Here I come, Mikkel." With that said, he activated his Time Refraction skill and charged straight at the blondie with lightning speed. His speed made Mikkel's eyes nearly pop out of his head. "This is insane! How is he so fast?" he thought, while starting to use his ice magic, firing it straight ahead in hopes of slowing Luin down. But unfortunately for him, it had no effect on Luin whatsoever. "Useless!" Luin shouted as he launched a kick forward. Accompanying his spinning kick was a wave of golden energy that swept away all the ice in front of him. The professors watching the battle from above were left with their jaws dropped in amazement. Whoa, what kind of magic is that? Is that really magic? Is that even magic at all? Whispers began to rise. Back to the battle, Mo realized he couldn't dodge anymore, so he summoned a dinosaur to gang up on Luin. This is a level 3 magic, fire summon, and true to its name, this dinosaur seems to be able to breathe fire as well. But this won't be a problem for Luin. As soon as he saw this magic, he already had his own countermeasure. "Earthquake!" Luin shouted, and punched straight down into the ground beneath him. His punch was so powerful that it caused the ground to shake violently, sending chunks of earth flying up and blocking the path of the red dinosaur. The observing students were wide-eyed at his method of handling the situation. Oh, he's using earth to block spark fire. Back to the battle. After Luin's earthquake punch, McCole lost his balance and fell to the ground. Seizing this opportunity, Luin immediately closed in on him like a specter. "No, don't come near me!" Mikkel shouted in fear as he saw Luin's face, while Luin greeted him with a bright smile. "Don't be such a coward, take this!" As he spoke, he extended his hand forward and delivered a painful flick to this guy. The sound of the impact echoed throughout the arena. At the moment the sound rang out, Mick was sent flying like a cannonball straight into the wall behind him. The spectators in the stands were also waiting with open mouths to see what would happen to this golden-haired guy. And as the dust slowly settled, McCole's figure appeared before Luin, but it seemed that despite taking a painful flick to the forehead, he still looked quite healthy. In fact, his eyes were now bloodshot as he growled at Luin. "Luin, do you dare to underestimate me?" But just as he finished this sentence, Luin immediately closed in on him. Then he punched him in the mouth. "Just a light scratch on the forehead," Luin said gently as he hit him. And while this guy was still dazed from the punch to the face, Luin delivered several more punches to his stomach, sending his scrawny body flying to the side. But due to the pain-reducing effect from the special herb, even after taking Luin's punches, he could still grin. "Ha ha, you're so weak, yet you think you can defeat me, not a scratch on me." Luin was also impressed by this pain-reducing effect. After taking so many hits, he was still conscious. At this rate, Mo could die from shock. If this continues, it will be very dangerous. Thinking this, to prevent this guy from getting hurt due to his own foolishness, Luin activated binding magic to restrain him. Then, he turned to the referee professor and raised his hand. "Sir, Mikkel is using banned substances." Upon hearing this, the professor rushed over and asked, "What do you mean? How could Mikkel use banned substances? Are you sure? If you're lying, you could be disqualified." "Yes, I'm sure because it's possible that the use of banned substances has been concealed or someone has discovered it but turned a blind eye," Luin stated firmly. The professor immediately understood his point and muttered, "What do you mean?" Luin glanced towards the teacher's observation room and said, "The person capable of using rare materials and responsible for testing before the match. Only one person in this academy can do that." He said this while staring intently at Eric. At this moment, his words were also heard by the other teachers. They began to discuss, "Come to think of it, Professor Eric is Michael's uncle, right? Wait, could it be Professor Eric?" Hearing the discussion, he hurriedly jumped down to the arena and turned to Eric, saying, "Luin, do you know what you're saying? You're accusing Michael of using banned substances, and I'm just turning a blind eye?" Luin confidently replied from across, "Yes, I have evidence." This statement surprised Eric a bit, and he said, "Huh? All right then, let's check again." He confidently made this statement because previously, Michael had used other drugs to conceal his use of herbs, but unfortunately for him, Luin had figured this out, so he decided to use another method to expose these two. "No need, sir. After all, you've already used a special elixir to hide his symptoms." This statement struck straight at Eric's heart. Immediately, his face turned worried as he said, "So what do you want now? Where's the evidence you mentioned?" "Let me show the teachers firsthand," Luin said as he placed his hand on the tree beside him. And right after that, he activated fire magic on his arm, causing the tree to explode into many pieces. After using this skill, he spoke to the people behind him. "This is the flick to the forehead I gave earlier. Let's say Mole's magic has increased due to training, but there's no way he could take so many hits and still be conscious and laughing. At this point, I think his skull is shaking violently, and at least 4 ribs have broken, yet he still smiles as if he feels no pain." Hearing Luin's words, everyone turned their eyes to Mike, and indeed, he was laughing as if possessed, with drool seemingly dripping from his mouth. Next, Luin looked straight at the teacher and said, "Sir, is there anything left to deny, Professor Eric?" And in response to Luin's strong and convincing words, Principal Tyrion behind could no longer contain his anger and roared. Professor Elk was startled by his voice and turned around, and what caught his eye was the extremely angry face of the principal. Then Tyon shouted loudly, "How dare you do something like this in such a sacred place? Professor Elric, come with me to the office immediately." Just like that, Luin and the supervising teacher beside him began to watch as Eric was taken up to the principal's office, and the final match ended here. The news of this uncle and nephew cheating in the exam had spread throughout the academy and naturally became a topic for everyone to discuss. The decline of the Gary Hill lineage had been exposed, and it was said that Professor Elric had been fired, and even that guy M had been expelled. Turning to Luin, because he was the one who exposed this, he received a new nickname called the Excommunicator Luin. Additionally, he was also called up by the principal for a private conversation. At this moment, standing in front of a gigantic door, a fierce light emanated from beneath his feet, and it seemed that Luin had been transported somewhere. And when the light disappeared, what lay before him was a rather familiar scene. This was the AL territory, Luin thought to himself, but then he denied it. No, it doesn't seem quite right. Next, he glanced at a chair beside him and was astonished. There was the throne of silk, the seat of the supreme mage. Why was it here? While he was still wondering about this, the voice of Principal Tyon rang out beside him. What do you see, Luin? This place was created by the Eyes of Menok. Have you heard of the Eyes of Menok? Yes, I've heard of them, Luin quickly replied and began to follow him. Menok, he was the leader who initiated the invasion of the Frelia continent. It is said that he had the ability to make a person see what they desired most. After his death, his body was refined into a treasure. The Eyes of Menok are the treasures that help you see what you want to see. What appeared before you earlier would be similar to what you desire most. Luin, listening from behind, slightly bowed his head in thought. What he desired most was to restore the Ael territory and become the most powerful mage, right? At this moment, for some reason, Tyrion asked him, Are you curious about what I see? Luin, and this question from him truly piqued Luin's interest. What do you see? The principal replied calmly, A world where everyone behaves according to their responsibilities. Students act like students, and mages act like mages. Of course, that is not easy at all, and just as the principal was saying this, the two of them had reached a massive wooden door. Next, Principal Tyrion led him inside. Behind this door was a room for receiving guests. At this moment, Principal Tyrion handed Luin a cup of tea and said, Have some tea, Luin. Thank you, sir, Luin quickly said and took a sip of the tea to see how it tasted. After waiting for Luin to finish drinking, he got to the main issue. I called you here because I have something to ask. Will you give me an answer? Among countless banned substances, how did you know that what Miko used was fire flower? Luin, hearing the principal's question, pondered for a moment and began to speak. Miko's attitude was different from usual. He was aggressive, but also restless. Not to mention the stimulation and mana flow were unusual, so I guess he used fire flower. The principal smiled knowingly and said, But from what I see, you seem certain rather than just guessing. Why is that? And in response to his question, Luin had to think about how to answer appropriately. It's best not to mention the Playmaker's Eye, he thought to himself, and began to speak. The Mana Barrier Hall only reduces magical power and does not affect physical strength, and what I used was physical strength, not magic. I'm sure Miko was in shock, yet he could still laugh and showed no pain. That can only prove that he used fire flower. Turning to Principal Tyrion, after hearing Luin's words, he was truly impressed. The boy was only 16 years old, but had keenly detected even the slightest changes in his opponent. Not to mention, in that situation, he acted very calmly, coupled with perfect magical ability. Perhaps there was no need to think much anymore. Thinking of this, he spoke. As the principal of the academy, I sincerely regret this incident. I apologize to you. Luin, I will ensure that the Gary Hill family can no longer harm you. And there is one more thing. I have a proposal. Would you like to participate in the Grand Festival this July as the Academy's representative? Upon hearing this proposal from the principal, Luin felt a bit anxious. Being the Academy's representative was a position that everyone desired. When he came here, he had a vague guess already. But thinking about it, Luin made his decision and said, Thank you, sir. I feel very honored to receive this offer. But you know, I still lack experience. I have not fought in a real battle for the entire year. During that time, I couldn't do anything and achieved nothing due to my mana disorder. The Grand Festival is a place that gathers all the talented people. I don't know if I have enough strength to compete with them, Luin said while bowing his head. But facing Luin's worries, the principal across from him smiled and said, That's not an issue. As a judge at the Grand Festival, I think you're worthy of being called a championship contender. Back with Luin, upon hearing the headmaster's high praise, he truly couldn't contain his surprise and exclaimed, What did you say, sir? A contender for the championship? Seeing his astonishment, Tyrion on the other side stroked his beard and said, I assure you, you are a very promising contestant, and what's even more frightening is that you'll be a secret weapon that no one expects. To them, you will be a complete mystery. They have no information on you at all. They won't know what techniques and fighting style you'll use, and of course, they won't be able to find a way to counter you. As for Luin, after hearing the headmaster's explanation, his face flushed with excitement. So, that's it? I'm always ranked last, so they won't be on guard. They also don't have much information on me, unlike an NPC. It looks like it'll be easy to pull off a surprise this time. And while he was at the peak of his excitement, the headmaster asked for his decision. Would he participate or not? Naturally, there was no way Luin was going to miss this opportunity. He immediately said with excitement, I'll do my absolute best not to let you down, sir. And just as the teacher and student were talking, the door from outside swung open. Seeing this, the headmaster remarked, Perfect timing. Please, come in. Then he looked over at Luin and made an introduction. Luin, I believe a physical skills class will be more beneficial to you than a magic class, so I've invited this professor here to help you develop those skills. Luin turned to look at the newcomer, a bit bewildered, and in the face of his surprise, the man who had just arrived spoke up. Are you doing all right here, helpless kiddo? What's with that look on your face? Not happy to see me? This knight's name was Gutter Piranti. He is the captain of the Knight Order in the foreign territory. At the same time, he is also one of only 5 Grade 5 knights in the Jadian Kingdom. This was the same person I met during the 3rd test. I can't believe I get to take a physical skills class with him. Luin celebrated inwardly. Meanwhile, across from him, Gutter sat down and began. First, I need to confirm a few things. I heard from Professor Heido that you're a special kind of mage, one who can only fight in close combat. Is that true? Yes, that's correct, Luin said calmly. After listening, Gutter offered his own assessment. From what I've seen, your movements are pretty good, fast, and efficient, with no wasted motion. But frankly, it's obvious you've never had any formal martial arts training. Your moves might have worked on that goblin before, but against us, you'd be read like an open book. No matter how strong you are, an opponent with good physical skills can predict your attacks just by watching the movement of your shoulders and hips. Hearing this, Luin was taken aback and thought to himself, he's right. All my moves are just repetitive motions from quests, so they aren't very applicable in a real fight. And while he was worrying about this, the knight across from him stood up and said, but don't you worry. If you learn from me, your movements will be transformed from the very basics. So, shall we get started right away? He suggested cheerfully. Soon after, the two of them headed out to the training grounds to get straight to practice. Gutter then began to instruct Luin. For a knight, the most important thing is footwork. A stable stance gives power to your sword swings, and what's more, your footwork will help you predict the enemy's next move. So, your first lesson will be on proper stepping. Only when you learn how to step correctly can you utilize physical skills. Chunmu is the martial art typically used to train knights. This discipline consists of a total of 36 forms, not including swordsmanship techniques. Following his words, Luin began to practice the martial forms himself. First were powerful palm strikes that sliced through the air in front of him. This was followed by punches and kicks combined with high-speed movements. Gutter, standing to the side, happily watched our main character practice and recalled his earlier conversation with him. I was wondering, what do you gain from teaching me martial arts? On top of that, you have to come to the academy every day. So why are you doing this? Luin asked curiously. In response to his question, he calmly replied, just think of it as a type of investment. I've met someone with the potential to become a talented mage in the future. If I contribute to that person's growth, it can be considered a worthy investment, don't you think? Back with Luin, hearing Gutter's somewhat playful words, he could only bow his head and say, then I'll be in your care, Professor Gutter. Hearing him use that title, Gutter felt a bit awkward and said, listen, Professor sounds way too formal. Just call me Senior. After all, I'm only in my 30s, you know? No way, Luin said, startled. Returning to the present, watching Luin train only made Gutter more certain of his thoughts. This kid's got some real guts. Last time, he even punched and broke a goblin's jaw, a melee mage who's stronger than a goblin. What an interesting brat. And just like that, 3 weeks flew by, and after 3 weeks of grueling training, Luin reaped his well-deserved rewards. Right at that moment, the system presented him with a series of notifications. The body arts skill has leveled up. Body arts has reached level 10. Obtained the title, My Body is a Weapon. Reward. Increased effect for the Mage's Frenzy skill. With the Mage's Frenzy skill, you can now channel magic throughout your entire body. Seeing this notification, Luin couldn't hide his excitement and turned to Trang on his shoulder, saying, mastering celestial martial arts is pretty useful, huh? Of course it is. That's how I reached level 3, Trang said with a smile. And Luin's current strength stat was 2,130. With such an impressive stat, Luin couldn't help but marvel. This power is immense. I can feel it so clearly. Even an old fossil like Trang had to sigh at the speed of Luin's power growth. The speed at which you're gaining this power is even more terrifying. It took Draa over 1.5 years after meeting me to reach 2,000 strength points. I wonder if it's because of the difference in time perception between humans and dragons? And as the two were talking, the hurried voice of his friend Jia-sun called out next to Luin, catching his attention. Luin, Jia-sun said as he rushed over, and seeing this, Luin quickly asked, Jia-san, what's wrong? Turning to Jia-san, who paused for a moment to catch his breath, he said, have you seen it? The list of participants for the Grand Festival has been posted at the Academy gate. After that, Luin also rushed to the school gate to see the list of students participating in the Grand Festival. And the moment he saw the words, Representative Luin Adel, he couldn't contain his happiness. Have I really become the representative? Luin thought to himself. At that moment, other students who saw Luin were also happy for him. Huh? It's Luin. Congratulations on becoming the representative. Luin, I'll be cheering for you at the Grand Festival. It had been a long time, but he had finally become the Academy's representative once again. Luin smiled at their congratulations. Oh, and by the way, his friend Jia-sun was moved to tears when he saw his own name on the participation list, even though he was ranked 31st. Putting this joyful event aside, Luin dove headfirst into training afterward. At this point, Professor Heido also spoke to him in amazement. I was very surprised when Mr. Gutter told me you had mastered celestial martial arts, but a 5th level student at the age of 16. Sometimes your genius talent scares me. I believe you can do it, Luin. He offered these words of encouragement and then left. And so, the preparations for the grand festival proceeded smoothly, just in time for their arrival in Antan, where the event was being held. Currently, all the students participating in this grand festival were gathered at a port, preparing to travel to Antan. Are we boarding the Mana ship here? This is my first time riding one. I heard it's incredibly fast. There are only 2 transit points in the Jadi Kingdom, but they say the Imperial Federation has over 100. Another student heard this and replied, "Of course, they're an empire. We're the smallest of the small nations." And while the crowd was buzzing with excitement, an unpleasant voice cut in, "Tisk, tisk," a bunch of country bumpkins making such a big deal over a simple mana ship ride. Jia-san overheard this contemptuous remark and irritably shot back, "What did you say?" The owner of the voice replied, "Stop acting like a hick and just shut up." This infuriated Jia-san even more. "You bastard! Are you finished yet?" he shouted. Turning to Luin, he was already staring at the speaker and thinking, "That guy is Henker, Miko's lackey. You participated in last year's magic festival with him." At that moment, a group of cronies gathered behind Henker and spoke up. "If you think Luin is going to pull off some miracle at the grand festival, you should just give up. He's only acting so high and mighty because he got good grades in the first semester." A subordinate next to him quickly added, "That's right. The representatives from the other academies are like monsters. We'd have a much better chance of winning if Miko, who has actually fought against them, was chosen as the representative." Turning back to Henker, he said, "Either way, I don't accept Luin as the Academy's representative, so you all should just look out for yourselves." His words made Jia-san tremble with rage. Even Luin felt a surge of annoyance. There are so many scumbags trying to get ahead by latching onto the Gary Hill family, but I have to do well in this competition, even if I'm stuck on a team with these assholes. Thinking this, he decided to clap back a little and said, "Miko must be so pleased to see his dog staying loyal, even when their master is about to get kicked out." And as expected, the top dog Henker couldn't stay silent after hearing this. "Did you just call us dogs?" Luin let out a sigh of relief and replied, "Thank goodness. I tried to speak as clearly as I could so that someone with your intellect could understand." "So you did understand what I meant?" Henker became enraged at this and snarled, "Don't think just because you're the Academy's representative." But before he could finish his sentence, Luin cut him off. "Listen, this grand festival is on a completely different level from the magic festivals you've been to before. If you get good results, you'll get better opportunities than the Gary Hill family could ever offer." Henker wasn't an idiot. He understood exactly what Luin was saying. However, actually getting those results was another problem entirely. Obviously, if we get good results, things would be different. But is that even possible? Everyone participating in this competition is a monster. Finally, our fate is to be stuck in the Jadi Kingdom and work under the Gary Hill family. "You shouldn't dream anymore," Han shouted loudly. And in response to this confident remark, Luin affirmed to him, "We can do it. The Grand Festival is an event where unity is the most important thing. It would be best if we eliminate any factors that hinder team spirit." The guy Henker over here understood something and said, "So that means you will compete without us." Hearing this, Luin coldly turned his head and said, "On the way there, you should think about who your current representative is, and there is no Gary Hill family here to recognize your loyalty." Luin's words were like daggers stabbing straight into this guy's pride. Immediately, his face began to twist, and he shouted, "You're ruining your first individual match. I won't listen to any orders from you during the Grand Festival." Luin over here ignored this wild dog barking as he pleased, and not long after, the whole group boarded the train to head to the Grand Festival. Once seated inside the train cars, the students couldn't help but marvel at its speed. "Wow, it's really fast. Look at that." Even an ancient person like Chang was excited about this train. "Hayes, what's going on over there? The world has become a better place. In my time, the fastest means of transportation was blah blah blah." Chang kept babbling in Luin's ear, making him dizzy. Just at that moment, the door of their train car opened, and a disdainful voice rang out. "I think I smell the scent of losers somewhere." Well, who do we have here? A bunch of country bumpkins from the stupid academy? Haha." These provocative words drew the attention of all the students toward the source of the sound. Following everyone's gaze, the 3 bald-headed guys were the ones who had just spat out those words. Luin immediately recognized the badge on their shirts. That pattern, it's from the National Magic Academy of Oyota. The National Magic Academy of Oyota, the only training school in the Sand Kingdom of Oyota, built in the desert, famous for its ancient history. They are particularly known for honing swordsmanship and physical abilities to the maximum. But what are people from the National Magic Academy of Oyota doing here? Luin wondered to himself. While he was thinking, the leading bald guy swaggered into their car as if nothing was wrong and shouted, "Hey, stupid academy students, where's Mikkel Gary Hill?" He didn't run away because of adversity, did he? I was planning to have him take care of us this year, like a slave. Haha. After laughing, this guy turned to make friends with a few students nearby. This year, you guys are responsible for the last place, right? Let's get along, shall we? Then he turned to Chang. After seeing these little generals causing a ruckus, he couldn't help but laugh with delight. Oh my, you're still so patient. Luin, can you really sit still after hearing that? It seemed like the little bear wanted Luin to fight. As for Luin over here, since this was his first time participating, he had to pay close attention to everything and avoid causing trouble. Therefore, he had been silently observing and thinking. I never knew before because I had never been to this place, but it seems our academy is being treated very poorly. Thinking this, Luin glanced at Professor Hido and judged. It seems the professor has no intention of intervening. The grand festival is a competition among students, and now the teacher's role is simply that of a guide. Currently, the authority and responsibility of the whole team lie in my hands. The representative of the academy turned to the Oyota Academy group. At this moment, the bald guy smiled and said to Henker, "Hey Henker, where's your new representative? At least he should be an interesting person." But before this guy could finish his sentence, Luin's voice rang out. Mikkel is probably lying in bed praying for his broken ribs to heal right now. The bald guy began to turn his face to observe Luin, and since Henker was afraid he wouldn't understand, he hurriedly explained, "That's our academy's representative." "That guy is the representative? This is the first time I've seen him," he said in surprise and started to approach Luin. Then this bald guy also maintained the minimum courtesy to introduce himself. "I am the representative of Oyota, Seda Mankiri. What's your name?" Hearing him ask like that, Luin coldly replied, "Luin Adel, and I think a greeting like this is enough for our first meeting. If you're done causing trouble, then get out of our cabin. Of course, you'll apologize for calling us a stupid academy before you leave, right? And with a polite attitude, I mean it like that," Luin said with a commanding expression, and at this request from Luin, the bald guy's face darkened. "What did you say? Did you just tell me to apologize?" He growled angrily. But this angry expression wasn't enough to intimidate Luin. Seeing Luin still unfazed by his authority, he turned to Henker and shouted, "Hey Henker, didn't you tell him who I am?" This cowardly guy shrank back and couldn't say a word, which only made him angrier. "You can't even handle this simple matter. Let me give you a lesson you'll remember." Turning to Luin. After seeing this bald guy act so recklessly, he understood everything. So that's how it is. This was why the Grand Festival participants were so scared of the Oyota Academy students, all because they were being bullied by this guy. Realizing this, Luin glanced at the fearful faces of the other students and understood everything. They were doing it on purpose to demoralize everyone before the match. So the Grand Festival had already begun, Luin thought coldly. A moment later, he regained his composure, looked the guy straight in the eye, and challenged him. "So you want to try me?" The bully was taken aback and said, "Huh? Is this bastard insane? You think I'm scared? Don't come crying to me when you get punched." With that, he crouched down and channeled power into his fist. But just as he was about to give Luin a reason to use his health insurance, a voice suddenly cut in. He froze. As the voice rang out, the buzz-cut guy's unfinished punch stopped instantly. He then turned toward the end of the train car and stammered, "Professor." At that moment, the Oyota Academy professor shouted, "Can't you just sit still? What kind of stunt are you pulling before the match? Trying to make enemies already." After saying that, he turned to Hido and said, "My students have been rude. On their behalf, I sincerely apologize." "It's all right, don't worry about it," Hido said casually. As soon as the Oyota Academy professor heard this, he immediately shoved the student back towards his own cabin. "Get back to your seat, now," he roared angrily. So even though the student was unwilling, he had to obey the professor's orders. However, before leaving the cabin, he didn't forget to turn back and mutter a few pointless words. "You just wait." After witnessing the incident, Luin felt a headache coming on. It was just as he thought. This wasn't going to be easy. Back with his professor, the bully asked curiously, "Professor, why did you stop us? You were the one who came up with this plan." "So why?" Hearing his student, the professor could only say helplessly, "You really didn't see it, did you?" "Huh? What do you mean, sir?" the student asked, confused. The professor then realized this buzzcut only knew how to fight, not how to read a situation. So he had to explain, "Didn't you see him smiling? That Professor Hido from their academy, he was smiling while watching you. It was as if he was waiting for you to make a move. Maybe he's just overconfident," the student said. But the professor sighed and replied, "I'm not so sure. I don't really know. I think there's more to that kid, Luin, than we know. He's not like that Mikkel kid you fought last time." Back in the cabin with Luin's group, the atmosphere had changed strangely after the Oyota crowd left. It seemed that Luin's courage to stand up to the bully's arrogance had given them a huge morale boost. So now, the whole group was surrounding him, asking questions non-stop. "Hey, what's the first match? It's a group battle, no representatives, so you're not playing, right? Luin, without you, can we actually do this?" Even the cowardly Henker chimed in. "Of course we can. We can't lose." The other students all agreed. That's right, we can't lose to those jerks. Luin was extremely pleased with this atmosphere. Just a moment ago, they were full of ego and jealousy, and now they were this united. Luin smiled, remembering the moment right after the Oyota students had left. Back then, the whole group had crowded around him, asking anxiously, "Are you okay? Luin, why'd you have to escalate things like that? Those guys are natural-born fighters." Yeah, what if a real fight had broken out? But before they could finish, Luin had spoken up. "So, you guys weren't bothered by it? They were looking down on you, openly disrespecting our school's representative. As the representative, what would have happened if I had just sat there quietly? They would have loved that, and they would have looked down on us even more." The students across from him looked flustered and said, "Well, that's true, but if we don't do anything, we're proving them right that we're just a bunch of idiots. Is that what you want? To be looked down on like this forever?" The other students could only lower their heads in shame. Luin seized the moment, turning to Hanker and shouting, "It's because you all kept backing down that they've looked down on us for the past year. So what are you going to do now? This isn't the time to let your egos divide us." And that was the pep talk Luin had given them. Back in the present, it seemed the team had finished their discussion and made a decision. "So, we're thinking of having Hanker play goalie in the aeroball match. What do you think?" the gray-haired student asked Luin. Hanker, standing beside him, scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "Me, the goalie?" You could tell by his face he was over the moon. But that was fine, because Luin was okay with this too. It seemed Mikkel's lackey was finally ready to participate, and so it would remain until the competition was over. Just then, the train's announcement chimed. "Next stop, Anton Yuchi." Professor Hito heard it and quickly reminded everyone, "We're here. Everyone grab your luggage and let's go." Anton Yuchi was a state within the Royal Federation, and it was also the only state recognized as the Empire's neutral territory. Because of this, upon entering, even enemies of 1,000 years had to temporarily set aside their feuds. If any blood was shed in Anton territory, the Freak Empire, as the hegemon of the continent, would step in to pass judgment. That's why all the large-scale international competitions are held in Anton. For example, the Mage Association's Grand Festival and the Swordsmanship Association's Grand Sword Tournament. Back to Luin's group. Right after stepping out of the station and seeing the scenery outside, they were all amazed by the development of this place. "Whoa, so this isn't the Freak Empire?" A student next to them heard this and said, "Don't be an idiot. This isn't the Empire. It's just the Royal Federation under the Empire's management. What's the difference anyway?" He mumbled, "Over here," even though he was a playboy. Jason's jaw dropped at the sight of this place. "This place looks like a whole different world, huh? Luin, our Diamond District was already pretty awesome, but coming here really shows you what's what." Luin was also overwhelmed by the splendor of Antan. "So this is Antan? It truly lives up to its name as the kingdom's capital. Everything has an ancient feel to it, and everyone seems so relaxed. Coming here makes our place feel so small." And while the group was chatting, it seemed Professor Haido had finished arranging transportation. So he said, "We're heading to our accommodations now. Everyone get on the bus." Following his words, everyone grabbed their luggage, boarded the vehicle, and they set off. And Luin himself, along with his friend Jason, were given the privilege of sitting with him. At that moment, Professor Haido also advised the two of them, "I'm just saying this as a precaution, but even if it's by accident, don't go near the other students. Causing trouble right now won't do any good." He said this while staring intently at Luin, as if the words were meant only for him. And this made Luin feel a bit awkward. "Why are you looking at me while saying that?" Back to Trang. While it was happily sitting on Luin's shoulder, it suddenly detected something and shouted, "Hey, look over there." Hearing that, Luin quickly turned and asked, "What's wrong?" "Master, I just caught a very interesting scent," it said as it jumped off Luin's shoulder, then faced a certain direction and continued, "It seems a remnant of Draa is here." Time quickly passed to the next day at the Xnit Academy's lodging house. As soon as the sun was up, Luin crept out of the house, which made his friend Jason, who was still sleepy beside him, ask curiously, "Huh, Luin? Going on a date?" Luin, however, paid no attention to his words and started dashing out into the street while opening his mini-map and turning to the creature on his shoulder. "Are you sure?" "Of course. You'll see it appear on the mini-map in a moment. To be honest, I find it strange too," Trang said hurriedly. And not long after, upon seeing the sign on a door, Trang shouted, "We're here! This is the Vibrating Memories Workshop!" Back to Luin. He had now calmed down and slowly opened the door to step inside. However, the scene inside surprised him a little. "I thought a black dragon's head would be in a much more special place. This place looks too ordinary." From Luin's perspective, this really seemed like the most ordinary and common shop you could find. But in his mind, a place like this should have looked like a black market or a rich person's basement to meet his expectations. And faced with Luin's wild thoughts, the little bear Trang had to explain, "The remnants of Draa are useless to ordinary mages. To them, they're just like trash." Back to Luin. After hearing this explanation from Trang, he began to use his player's eye skill to search. And right after that, he detected a strange aura emanating from something not far from him. More specifically, this aura was coming from a ring placed inside a glass case, a player's innate treasure. This artifact was also Draka's first failure. Its damage immunity ability helps resist physical impacts on the player's body, increasing the ability to nullify physical damage. Back to Luin, after seeing the description failure, his mind went a little fuzzy. Seeing this, Trang chuckled and said, KK, this one's a bit special. It not only resists attacks but also normal touches. You can't even get a hug from your lover. It's less about resisting and more about automatically repelling any physical impact that touches your body. It gets in the way when you don't need it, and you can't turn it off when you do, which is why it's called a failure. But even so, you still need this thing, Trang said dejectedly. And Luin agreed with this. After all, this was actually a pretty sweet item. As long as it was used correctly, it would be incredibly effective. Thinking this, Luin quickly took the ring out to examine it, and right after that, the system displayed a notification. Plus, 200 strength points for equipping the item. And with just that one notification, the ring's value in Luin's eyes shot up to a whole new level. A 200-point strength boost. That alone made him want to wear it. Thinking this, Luin couldn't hold back anymore and immediately put it on his hand, as if he was afraid it would just vanish. Perfect. It's a perfect fit. Like it was made just for me, Luin thought to himself. Then he walked over to the shop owner and asked, I'd like to buy this ring. How much is it? The shop owner heard this and said cheerfully, Heh heh, just take it. It's been here for a long time, and I don't even know how to properly store it. Seeing how kind the owner was, Luin said, In that case, let me buy something else. Haha, feel free, the shop owner said with a bright smile. Then, Luin walked around the shop and used his skill, Adventurer's Eye, to check if he had missed any valuable items. Having Adventurer's Eye is indeed convenient. It even identifies the value of objects. Luin mumbled and began to observe the items around him. At that moment, he noticed several books starting to glow with different colors. The green color indicated common rarity, the red color indicated medium rarity, and the blue color indicated low rarity. Just then, Luin was surprised to see a book in front of him emitting a bright yellow light, nearly blinding him. Even the system had to give it a special yellow notification, indicating high rarity, quantum mechanics related to magic and swordsmanship as a reaction. Luin flew like Superman and reached for this book. But coincidentally, at that moment, another girl placed her hand on the book. Seeing this, Luin turned to look at the silver-haired girl and used Adventurer's Eye to check. The result was truly surprising. Irene Prius, a level 5 mage with very high potential. Just seeing this name, Luin guessed the identity of this girl, Irene Prius, from the Girls' Academy. Not only that, but this girl also had a very special identity. The Queen of Hell, the King of Mages, the Supreme Mage Terran Armis. Irene Prius was one of the 11 successor mages personally chosen by him. It was said that she was a genius about to reach level 5. But in reality, she had already reached level 5. It seemed the rumors had downplayed her abilities. While Luin was still pondering, Irene pulled her hand away. Seeing her do that, he replied, I was here first. Turning to Irene, after looking at Luin's uniform, she said, From your uniform, you must be from Xnit Academy. I am Irene Prius, from the Girls' Academy. You found what you needed, and now you're just looking for something else, right? I came here just to buy this book. If it's not too much trouble, could you let me have it? At the words of this beautiful girl, Luin began to think. It turned out she had heard him talking. Is she buying this book for the Starry Festival? Thinking of this, Luin asked, So what do you need this book for? Usually, not many people want to buy books like this. Hearing his question, Priya started to fumble, saying, I'm just using it for homework. I can't explain it clearly, just know that. Just by looking at her demeanor, it was 100% a lie. With Luin's sharp mind, he realized this immediately. It was probably not homework from school, but something related to the Queen of Hell. Thinking of this, for some reason, Luin didn't want to compete anymore. So he said, Then you can take it. It's important to you, so go ahead. After saying that, Luin wandered around to see if he could find any rare items, leaving Prius behind, looking confused at him. Not long after, Luin returned to the resting place and recounted his encounter with Prius to Jackson and Henker. As soon as these two heard it, they began to shout excitedly. You met Irene Prius? Wow, what did you two talk about? Is she as beautiful as rumored? Where did you meet her? How did you meet her? Both of them started firing questions at him with shining eyes, making Luin feel a bit flustered. Can each of you just ask one question? Hearing him say that, Jackson calmed down a bit and slumped in his chair like a dead fish, starting to lament life. I'm so jealous. My dream is to touch Irene's hand just once. At this dog's dream of his, Henker next to him laughed and boasted, That's nothing. I met Irene at the Starry Festival, and I even sat next to her. But before Henker could finish bragging, Jackson angrily said, Come on, that doesn't count as talking. Henker retorted, What? Look at yourself. You didn't even get close to her, and you're talking about it. Just like that, the two of them began to argue, causing Luin to have a headache. Finally, unable to take it anymore, Luin had to change the subject. Well, I heard she's strong, but she always ranks second. I heard she loses to the top one, Doom Priam, every year to the point of dying. Upon hearing Luin speak about his goddess like that, Jackson slammed the table and said, "You're talking nonsense. How dare you say that about my Irene?" Unfortunately, his words were immediately slapped down by Henker next to him. "It's not nonsense. He's the top one at the Freak Military Training Academy. In other words, in this continent, he's the most recognized among his peers. Not to mention he also wields a light sword." Luin was a bit surprised to hear this, and then understood why Irene needed to buy that book. A sword? So, that's it. That's why Irene needs that book. She needs it to defeat Doom Priam. Returning to the conversation, Henker continued, "But being a swordmaster isn't all that great. Compared to other types of weapons, a magic sword doesn't provide much power, and mastering swordsmanship isn't easy either. But Doom Priam is different. His light sword is a level S artifact, and in terms of skill, he must at least be on par with a regular knight." After hearing Henker introduce the achievements of that guy, Jackson could only sigh. What do you mean, mastering swordsmanship, mastering magic, and an S-level artifact? Not to mention he lives in a fancy house, has a powerful dad, and is handsome. The girls must be crazy about him. Ha, is there really someone like that in this world? Turning to Luin, after hearing Henker's words, he also began to feel worried. One is a 5th-level mage at only 16 years old. The other is a swordsman who always takes first place. Can I actually win against them? Facing these geniuses, no one would probably pay any attention to someone like me right now. But I want to give it a try, Luin told himself. And at that very moment, a student ran in from outside and shouted, "The opening ceremony lineups are out!" Hearing this, a look of excitement appeared in Luin's eyes. Great. The grand festival has only just begun, Luin thought to himself as he started to walk outside. The scene changes to the announcement area. The plaza was currently packed with people because the debut matchups had finally been announced. At this moment, Luin was also straining his eyes to look at the list to see which academy they had to fight, and at the same time, the annoying voices of the Oyota Academy students rang out. Damn it! A match against that stupid academy? This is going to be too easy. Fighting these guys just gives us more time to mess around. The whole group started laughing when they saw their opponents. Luin, on the other hand, felt a headache coming on. Fighting these guys is the worst. They're famous for playing dirty, not to mention many students at our school are already mentally scarred by them. Luin thought while glancing at the worried students whispering behind him. He turned back towards the rival student. Seeing that Luin's group said nothing, he grew even bolder. "You guys are so weak you can't even get us excited. So damn boring. I can't believe we get to fight the stupid academy. This is like hitting the jackpot. Hey, aren't you afraid they'll hear you? Who cares? So what if they hear? What are they going to do about it?" The taunts began to fly, and faced with these words, Luin just smiled schemingly. "All right then, I'll take this opportunity to show you all that we're not the same as before." With this thought, Luin looked at the guy's name and said, "I've been waiting for you too. There are a lot of people participating in the grand festival, huh?" Hearing Luin say this, the guy turned back and asked, "What do you want?" "I'd like to make a little introduction," Luin said calmly. He then turned to face the other students and shouted loudly, "It's a pleasure to meet you all. I am Luin Adel. I am the representative of the stupid academy you all are talking about. I don't have much to say, just one small request. Never call us the stupid academy again. It's unpleasant to hear. I'm tired of being at the bottom of the rankings. From now on, I intend to be the one at the top," Luin confidently declared. But his confidence was met with boos and protests from students of other schools. "If we don't call you the stupid academy, what should we call you? What nonsense, stop posturing." Even the rival student was baffled by Luin's declaration. "Do you think this is some backwater competition? You at the top? That's just irritating to hear. Who do you think you are? I am the trump card," Luin told them confidently. After that, the crowd dispersed. The scene shifts to the Oyota Academy students' headquarters. At this moment, they were all chattering among themselves. "Who was that guy?" "Luin Adel. I did some research. I heard he used to be the dead last." Another person heard this and exclaimed in shock, "The dead last gets to be the academy's representative?" The guy who brought it up then explained, "I'm not sure, but I heard that at the beginning of this semester, he suddenly changed. 180 degrees, and his scores suddenly skyrocketed." "A 180-degree change?" the other guy asked inquisitively. "Yeah, that's probably why he's so confident." After hearing this, the first guy recalled what his professor had once said. "There's something more to that kid that we don't know." But perhaps his brain wasn't suited for deep thought, because after only 3 seconds, he sighed and said, "Well, I'm probably just overthinking it. That arrogant bunch, I'll teach them a lesson in our school's traditional way." He said this with a very sinister smile on his face. Scene changes to the XN Academy's lodging. Right now, everyone was in a strategy meeting. because tomorrow was the monogrenade toss event, a team-based competition, and except for the Academy representatives, all team members could participate. The challenge required participants to throw monogrenades at a golem made of mithril, a super hard material, and the team that defeated it faster would win. The event was quite simple, but the students were still worried and said to Luin, "Without you tomorrow, I don't know if we'll be okay." Hearing this, Luin knew they were extremely anxious and spoke up to reassure them. "It's true that our individual abilities don't match Oyota's, but I believe you all will win." Win? How? Everyone asked in confusion. Luin then laid out his strategy. "This is a team battle. If everyone coordinates, we will definitely win. Let's start by dividing into small groups. Team 1 will heat up the grenades, Team 2 will be responsible for transportation, Team 3 will attack the golem, and Team 4 will hinder the opponent by healing their golem." Luin's strategy sounded pretty solid, but it still left everyone feeling uncertain. "If we do that, it will take a very long time to take down the golem." "That's right. Oyota will have 30 people attacking at once. If our side has fewer people, it'll be difficult, not to mention they're no slouches either." The group began to whisper among themselves. Seeing that they were only focusing on the negatives, Luin had to use his powers of persuasion to motivate them again. "What's wrong with you all? Do you remember what I said in front of them? I said we would be the ones at the top. I was completely serious when I said that. Whether I participate or not, I'll still help you guys with everything I've got. When Oyota makes one move, we'll make 2, or even 3 moves." The members of Oyota are all exceptionally talented, which is why they can stick to traditional methods. But if we do it that way, it'll take way too much time. Turning to the group, after hearing this, they knew they had no other choice but to trust in Luin's plan. So John started to speak. "All right, I trust you, Luin. Me too." Hanker also said, "Us too. I trust you as well." And just like that, with just a few convincing words, Luin successfully sold them on his plan, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. Next, Luin began to assign specific tasks. "All right, then Hanker will be the commander. Zola, Min, Mora, Akka, you guys will heat up the grenades. After the grenades are primed, Simon will start moving." Just like that, the formation was split into teams based on each person's abilities, and this was all possible thanks to his innate skill. Gamer's Eye allows him to see through his opponent's abilities. With it, he could minimize disadvantages and focus more on everyone's strengths. Once they were in the right teams, everyone would gradually gain more confidence, just as Luin had predicted. After hearing their team assignments, everyone became much more confident. "This time it'll probably be fine, right? Yeah, we might actually be able to win. I'm not good at throwing, but I can heat it up in 5 seconds. "What do you mean not good? I'm amazing at it." Everyone's chatter started to fill the air, which made Luin feel much more relieved. Thank goodness, everyone's starting to get more confident. Their trust has been solidified. And just when Luin thought their trust was solidified, bad news came running their way. A student came rushing in out of breath, his face all bruised up, as if someone had just beaten him to a pulp. Seeing this, Luin quickly called out, "Fu LM, what happened to your face? Are you okay?" Hearing this, Fu LM gritted his teeth and said, "It was the Oyota bastards. Their representative called his goons and dragged us away." Upon hearing this, Luin's expression darkened. Even without the student saying another word, he could already guess what would happen next. Scene changed to the Oyota group's headquarters. Just then, the sound of a door opening was heard from outside, and when the guy saw that it was Luin who walked in, he sneered. "Oh, wow, see? I told you he'd come crawling here," he said cheerfully to his cronies around him, then looked back at Luin with a provocative expression and said, "So, what are you gonna do? What do you think you can do to us?" And in response to his tone, Luin calmly said, "Seda Mankiri, get out here now." Hearing Luin order him around like that, Seda laughed out of anger and said, "This is crazy. Has this dude lost his mind? What gives you the right to act so high and mighty all the time?" He said this while staring straight into Luin's eyes, and Luin immediately gave him an answer. "On what grounds, you ask?" he said, while starting to pat the guy on the shoulder. Then, with just a little bit of force, Luin made the guy's large body drop to his knees in an instant. And the immense pressure from Luin's hand made the crew cut guy's eyes widen in disbelief. What kind of monstrous strength is this? At that thought, he couldn't accept the fact that Luin was so strong, so he roared, "You bastard!" As he spoke, he started to swing his fist straight at Luin. But Luin's reaction was super fast. He instantly dodged to the side, and at the same time, grabbed the guy's arm and twisted it behind his back, making him cry out in pain. And after seeing the guy was restrained, Luin coldly warned him, "I'm warning you. If you dare touch one of my people again, it won't end like this." Strangely enough, for some reason, when his underlings saw their representative getting beaten, they didn't rush in to gang up on him, but just stood there watching and asking questions. "What's going on? Seda, are you okay?" But at that moment, Luin's voice rang out again, catching the guy's attention. "So, want to make a bet with me?" And just like that, a secret bet was made between the Xnit Academy and Oyota Academy. After Luin returned, he told everyone what had happened, and of course, the students couldn't help but be astonished. A forehead flick? If we beat Oyota Academy, you're going to flick Seta Mankiri's forehead? Don't tell me it's a forehead flick like yours, Luin, everyone exclaimed in astonishment. Luin then added a few more details. Not only that, they also have to apologize to us in front of everyone. Hearing that, the group started to laugh, as if they could already see themselves winning without even considering what would happen if they lost. Oh, we've got to win this time. What great motivation. Haha, all we have to do now is win. And while their fighting spirit was blazing, some kid outside hurriedly said, "It's time to go to the Antan Arena. Everyone get ready." Following that guy's announcement, Luin's group quickly gathered in the courtyard. It wasn't just them, but all the students from the other academies as well. The whole crowd started to swarm the area. And during this time, Luin had a moment to leisurely observe his opponents and think, the Grand Festival, a festival for mages from all across the continent throughout history. The mages present here will all become key figures in changing the fate of the entire continent. I can't believe I'm also a part of this place, a place where historical legends are made. Not long after the opening ceremony ended, a teacher announced, "The opening ceremony is over. All students please return to your seats." Hearing this, Luin led his group back. And just then, he ran into that buzz-cut guy again. The moment he saw Luin, he threatened him, "Get ready, I won't be careless this time." After saying that, the guy took off immediately without giving Luin a chance to say anything back. But Luin had no intention of reacting to him anyway. "My real opponent isn't you. My target is that guy, Doom Pram." As Luin thought this, he glanced over at a tall, handsome guy. That was the winner of the Magic Festival and the top student from the Freak Military Training School. If he made it to the later rounds, he would definitely have to face him, Luin thought to himself. But just then, a female voice from behind surprised him. "You must be the one who's always causing trouble, huh?" The voice belonged to the girl, Prius. Turning to face her, she continued, "Yesterday you went on a rampage, and you even caused a scene at Oyota Academy." Hearing this, Luin couldn't hide the surprise on his face and asked, "How did you know? It's a small world here. I'm sure everyone knows by now," Prius said calmly. Luin felt a bit embarrassed after hearing that. He said, "Oh, is that so? I wasn't causing trouble, just clearing the air a bit." Turning back to Prius, she then offered Luin some advice. "You let me have that book last time, so I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't make yourself stand out too much." Hearing this, Luin replied, "Just like you, right? You're hiding your own talents, after all." Prius was startled by his words and turned back around, but before she could say anything, Luin continued. "Well, I have to go. We have to participate in the first event," Luin said as he hurried away, leaving a very puzzled Prius behind him. The scene shifts to the competition arena, where the announcer's voice boomed. "In just a few minutes, the mana grenade throwing competition will begin. The first two teams are Xnit Academy and Oyota Academy." Back in the hallway leading to the arena, Jason spoke to his team. "Are you ready? Let's show everyone our strength. Let's show them we're not the stupid academy anymore." After his speech, everyone's spirits were high as they confidently walked out. And with that, the first event, the mana grenade throwing competition, officially began. But right now, the spectators in the stands were completely baffled by the Xnit team's actions. "Huh? What are they doing?" Murmurs of confusion filled the air. Following their gaze, they saw Luin's group splitting their formation into smaller teams and assigning specific tasks to each other. It was understandable why the crowd was so confused, because until now, victory in team competitions had always relied on the strength of individuals. Arranging a formation like a knight order was completely unheard of to everyone. Students from other academies who didn't understand Luin's group's intentions began to look down on them. Are they splitting into a heating group and a throwing group? Whatever. Oyota will win anyway. They're the ones who declared themselves the top dogs. The stupid academy really is stupid. That's why they're always in last place. They probably don't realize some things are just beyond human limits. Every one of these taunts reached Luin's ears. But it wasn't long before everyone who looked down on the Xnit team had to eat their words, because right then, before their very eyes, the Xnit team had destroyed one of the golem's arms. "Look at the Xnit team's golem! It lost an arm!" someone shouted in a hurry. Meanwhile, on the field, Jason saw this and cheered everyone on while throwing. Everyone keep it up. And while the team was getting exhausted from throwing grenades, Luin was on the sidelines, shouting instructions like a soccer coach. "Hanker, the heating speed is good. Mora, Akai, get in there and help with transport. John, aim for its right arm." And following Luin's commands, it wasn't long before the golem's right arm also bid farewell to its owner. "We destroyed its right arm." The crowd cheered as if they'd struck gold. The fact that the Xnit team was continuously damaging the golem made the Oyota team captain unable to contain his anger, and he yelled out, "What the hell are you idiots doing? How are you losing to the stupid academy? Those lunatics are something else. It's like the golem isn't getting any weaker." "Damn it," Luin growled in frustration, seeing that the golem his team was attacking showed no signs of lasting damage. Not far from there, Prius had to praise the Xnit captain. Impressive. The reason Xnit Academy was able to overcome Oyota's advantage in individual skill was because they used strategy. But for this strategy to be effective, one must have a precise understanding of each person's abilities. He found the book he needed in just a moment. He can even group the members based on their individual abilities. Who on earth is this person? Why have I never seen him at other magic festivals before? Prius wondered, glancing over at Luin with countless thoughts in her mind. Back in the arena, Jason gripped a grenade in his hand, pouring all of his mana into it, and hurled it forward like a cannonball. "It's over, you monster!" Jason yelled. And a moment later, when the mana grenade hit the golem, it caused the creature to explode into countless pieces. Meanwhile, the Oyota captain could only grit his teeth in anger after seeing Luin's team win. And at that moment, after seeing the golem collapse, Luin's group cried tears of joy. "Boo-hoo, we did it, we won!" Then, the whole group rushed over to Lin and tossed him into the air to celebrate. The Grand Festival, the first event of the competition where everyone thought Oyota would win, yet the victory went to the Idiot Academy. And Oyota Academy's loss to Xnit Academy caused the scornful remarks to immediately change targets. And so, the Idiot Academy was no longer at the bottom of the rankings. Oyota was dead last. If so, what should they be called now? Oi, oh no ta? That's gotta hurt. Ha ha. And while the students from other academies were laughing at Oyota's expense, an announcement from the organizers rang out. The Capture the Flag portion between Academy representatives is about to begin. The first match will be Representative Luin Adel of Xnit Magic Academy and Seda Mankiri of the Oyota Royal Magic Academy. As the announcement echoed, Luin slowly walked out onto the arena floor, and Jason's group behind him started to cheer him on. "Luin, you got this. Wipe the floor with them." Luin gave them a firm fist pump to show his determination and began to walk onto the field, coming face to face with that guy. And just as he was about to start his event, Trang, who was beside him, let out a few laughs and said, "Why do you look so tense?" Hearing this, Luin explained in a low voice, "We're currently ranked 20 out of 32 schools, right? That's just perfect." "How is that perfect?" Trang asked, puzzled. After hearing that, Luin began to reveal his intention. "After that last match, people are starting to pay attention to us, but that's still not enough to shake off the label we've had for so many years. We absolutely must win spectacularly. Only with a spectacular victory against Oyota will people start to see us in a different light," Luin stated with conviction. Trang now understood his intention to pull off something big and surprise everyone, so she said with a laugh, "Oh, so that's it." But that wasn't all. Luin then glanced up at a room floating in the air and mumbled, "And we also have to prove ourselves to the Supreme Mage." The scene shifts to the special room floating in the air. It seems this is the observation room for the headmasters participating as judges for the competition, and they were currently observing the situation below through a crystal ball that reflected the image of the arena. And this white-haired man was the most powerful person among them, Pluto Tehran Artis. At that moment, he looked at Luin's image inside the crystal ball and turned to speak to Tyrion beside him. "Luin Adel, that boy was once a candidate among the 11 commoner children." Headmaster Tyrion was a bit surprised to hear that and said, "You still remember?" "I have a habit of remembering talents. That boy is a natural-born genius, which is why he was able to self-teach how to use mana at such a young age. That's why I was so disappointed when I learned he had a mana disorder," Tehran said calmly, but his words greatly surprised. "Headmaster Tyrion, weren't you the one who treated the boy as if he were a useless good-for-nothing?" And in the face of Tyrion's words, Tehran had no intention of refuting them. He just smiled slightly and said, "But I never expected you to choose such a student as the Academy's representative. I don't think you're doing this just to prepare something interesting like before. Or has the boy managed to break the curse after a few years?" Tyrion said in a voice full of hidden meaning. "See for yourself, and you will have your answer." Back to the arena, Trang turned to ask Luin, "So what are you going to do now? Binding or freezing requires getting close, or maybe you shouldn't summon your guardian." Hearing that, Luin quickly said, "That won't work. The guardian isn't very smart." "Then how are you going to fight this match?" Trang asked curiously. And in response to her question, Luin cracked his knuckles with a loud pop and said, "We'll just fight head-on." And at that moment, on the side, the professor, acting as referee, saw that the two opponents were fired up like fighting cocks. So he declared the start of the match. And right after his command, Luin shot straight towards the guy with breakneck speed. But his opponent also reacted very quickly. The moment he saw Luin charging at him, he activated his own magic, while shouting, "You'll pay for what you did to me the other day. Summon Battle Guardian." With that said, he slammed both of his palms onto the ground to complete the magic, and then, right after that, a giant, armored knight figure suddenly appeared in front of him and charged straight at Luin like a tank. Then, as soon as it got within striking range, the giant knight raised the spear in its hand, intending to skewer Luin. As for Luin, to be honest, this guardian didn't seem very challenging to him. He wasn't stupid enough to face this thing head-on and tire himself out. The moment the hulking figure got close to him, he immediately activated the skill, Time Refraction, to increase his speed. He then quickly dashed to the side and circled around to the guy's back, much to his opponent's stunned surprise. "Damn it!" he yelled and started to swing his arm backward. But for a summoning-type mage like him, the power of his punch was like a newborn's to Luin. Without any difficulty, Luin was able to firmly grab his arm. "Knew it," Luin said with a bright smile, and his opponent on the other side tried to struggle and escape Luin's grasp, but it was no use. He was weak and in danger, trembling uncontrollably. Just then, Luin warned him, "I don't think you should be saying that right now." Hearing Luin's voice, the man flinched and glanced behind him. And for some reason, his guardian was charging straight toward them, despite its master being in the line of fire and likely to take the hit. Seeing this, he couldn't help but curse. "Stop, you idiotic guardian!" He said this, his face slick with sweat, and immediately tried to jump aside to dodge. Luin's hand held him in place like a steel vice. "I can't move," he thought anxiously. Luin then challenged him. "Go on, try and run." At this point, the man was truly terrified. "Ah, so that feeling from before was real. It wasn't just because I let my guard down," he said as he began to close his eyes, as if resigning himself to his fate. The guardian's spear was now right upon him, but then 1 second, 2 seconds, then 3 seconds passed, and still nothing happened. This made the man a bit curious, and he slowly opened his eyes to see what was going on. The scene before him left him utterly astonished, because what greeted his eyes was the sight of Luin fighting his giant guardian one-on-one with his bare fists. To be more precise, he was giving the guardian a serious beatdown. "No, it can't be! Is he attacking a steel guardian with his bare hands?" Seda thought in disbelief as he watched his guardian slowly crumble under Luin's punches, and just a few seconds later, the guardian reached its limit and vanished. After dealing with the behemoth, Luin turned and walked toward him. Seeing this, the man grew a little nervous and then asked, "Did you just save me?" "Save you? Why would I save the person who humiliated my academy? I just wanted to finish you with my own hands. Remember the bet? The loser gets a flick on the forehead." As Luin spoke, he raised his hand to the man's head, and before the man's worried eyes, a single flick sent his large body flying backward like a sack of potatoes. The sky looked so blue, he started thinking random thoughts as he flew. After witnessing this spectacle, his schoolmates celebrated as if they'd won the lottery. Then, cheers from the other spectators also erupted. "So awesome! What kind of magic is that?" That match was a total blowout, and Luin's performance had also caught the attention of someone else. The scene shifts to a room in the sky. At that moment, Headmaster Tyrion glanced at Nether King Terron beside him and thought, "Tsk, there he goes again." Following his gaze, the Supreme Mage was sitting there, completely dumbfounded, as if he were in utter shock. And that was indeed the case, as Terron was currently questioning his very existence. A demigod, like myself, the only mage to ever reach level 8, known as the Supreme Mage. And yet I've never seen this type of magic before. Who in the world are you?